The wind swept across the surface of the Black Lake like a restless spirit, sending ripples that shivered under the pale moonlight. At the water's edge, Luna Lovegood stood barefoot in the damp grass, her silver blonde hair loose and fluttering, her wide eyes fixed on the dark expanse before her. The others had got in at sundown, Hermione to the library, Harry to Quidditch practice, Ron complaining all the way back to the castle about the chill in the air, but Luna had stayed. She always stayed when the lake sang. At first it was just a whisper, a breath beneath the water, like a lullaby half-remembered from a dream. Then came the notes, soft, mournful, rising in delicate spirals that curled around the ancient stones of Hogwarts. The melody had no words, but it carried meaning all the same. Longing, grief, a plea. Luna tilted her head, listening. The psalm wasn't made for human ears. She could feel it in her bones, a vibration that resonated deep within her chest. It wasn't music so much as memory, centuries of sorrow held aloft by magic too old to name. "It's them," she murmured, more to the lake than to anyone else. "You're still there, aren't you?" Behind her, a twig snapped. She didn't turn. "If you've come to tell me I'm daft, Draco, you're wasting your breath. I've heard it all before." Draco Malfoy stepped forward, his cloak pulled tight against the evening cold. His face was sharp in the moonlight, pale and guarded. "You're standing in the mud again," he said, voice clipped. "And talking to water." "Again, I'm listening," she corrected gently. "There's a difference," he frowned, glancing at the lake. "I don't hear anything." Luna smiled, faint and knowing. "You wouldn't, not yet. But you will." He crossed his arms. "This is about those ridiculous rumors, isn't it? The ones about Atlantis? Father says it's pure myth, wild tales spun by muggles and mad wizards." "Your father hasn't stood here at midnight," she said softly. "He hasn't felt the water breathe." Draco shifted, uneasy. "You can't just wander off into the lake, Lovegood. It's dangerous. There are Grindhelows, mer-people, and Merlin knows what else down there. And something else," she added, turning to face him at last. Her eyes were pale and luminous, like moonlight on glass. "Something older. The city didn't sink on its own. It was hidden, protected. And now it's waking up." He scoffed, but there was no real heat in it. "You sound like one of those loony magazines your father prints." "Perhaps," she said, unfazed. "But the song is real, and it's getting stronger." A silence settled between them, broken only by the distant croak of a frog, and the soft lap of water against stone. Then, faint but unmistakable, the melody returned, a single clear note, rising from the depths, vibrating through the air like a harp string, struck beneath the sea. Draco stiffened. That wasn't there before." Luna's smile deepened. "You heard it." I don't know what I heard," he muttered, taking a half-step back. But his eyes remained fixed on the water, wide with something like awe or fear. "They're calling for help," she whispered. "And someone has to answer." "You're not going in there alone," he said abruptly. She tilted her head. "I didn't say I was." "No," he said, jaw tight. "But I can already tell you're planning to. And if you do, then I'm coming with you." Luna studied him for a long moment. "Why?" Draco looked away, toward the silhouette of the castle. "My cousin's in Hufflepuff. She's been having nightmares for weeks. About drowning, about voices in the dark. I thought it was just nerves, but now—" He trailed off. Luna reached out, her fingers brushing his sleeve. "Then you've already heard them too, in your dreams." He didn't pull away. "Don't get sentimental, Lovegood." "I won't," she said, her voice soft. "But thank you, Draco." He didn't answer. But when she turned back to the lake, he stayed beside her, silent, listening as the song rose once more, beautiful, haunting, and full of secrets too long buried beneath the deep. The first to notice was Hagrid, his broad frame silhouetted against the gray morning mist rolling off the Black Lake. He stood knee-deep in the reeds, his crossbow lowered, eyes narrowed at the water's edge. A trail of crushed lily pads led into the deeper dark, and beside it, nothing. No feathers, no scales, not even a ripple to mark where the Grindelo had last been seen, sunning itself on the rocks. "They're gone," he muttered, voice low, and rough like stones grinding together. "All of them. The Grindelows, the giant squid's young, one of the Kelpies from the western bank. Even the mer-people haven't been singing lately. Something's off, I tell ye." By midday, The unease had seeped into the castle like damp through stone. Professor Sinister reported missing moon cows from the astronomy tower paddock, their usual grazing grounds untouched but empty. Filch grumbled about strange, wet footprints near the dungeons, though no one believed him, until Professor Sprout found a cluster of drowned mandrakes floating near the greenhouse vents, their tiny fists clenched around strands of iridescent seaweed that smelled faintly of salt and burnt coral. Luna Lovegood stood at the edge of the lake that evening, her bare feet pressing into the cold mud, her wand tucked behind her ear and a pair of ranish-shaped earrings swaying gently in the breeze. She tilted her head, listening. Most heard nothing. But she did, a low hum like glass singing underwater, rising and falling in patterns too deliberate to be natural. It curled beneath the surface, whispering in a language without words, tugging at the edges of her thoughts. Atlantis, she thought. Not myth. Memory. She turned just as footsteps crunched on the gravel path. Draco Malfoy approached, his robes pulled tight against the chill, a sneer half formed on his lips. Still talking to invisible things, Lovegood? Or have you finally lost it completely? Not invisible, she said, calm as moonlight. Just unseen. The lake is dreaming, Draco, and it remembers a city older than Hogwarts. He scoffed, but his eyes flicked to the water uneasy. His younger cousin Alaric had been assigned to help Hagrid with the magical creature inventory, and hadn't returned from checking the Merpeople's Cove. The boy was reckless, yes, but not stupid. Not the type to vanish without a trace. You think something took them? Draco asked, voice quieter now. I think something called them, Luna replied, or woke them. The singing, it's not a warning, it's an invitation. And you believe that? He took a step closer, his usual arrogance fraying at the edges. You're going to dive in there, aren't you, with your dirigible plums, and your crumple-horned snorkack theories? I have a bubblehead charm, she said simply, turning to face him fully. Her gaze was clear, unflinching, and a lead-weight spell to keep me from floating. But I won't go alone. The deeper you go, the older the magic. It resists the uninvited. Draco exhaled sharply. You're mad. Maybe, she said, smiling faintly. But so was Columbus. A beat of silence passed between them, the wind tugging at their robes. Somewhere beneath the still water, the singing rose again, a single pure note that vibrated in Draco's molars. He felt it in his chest, like a memory he'd never lived. Fine, he said at last, jaw tight. But if I drown, I'm haunting you, Lovegood. Luna only nodded, as if she'd expected nothing less. Then we'll talk. I find ghosts rather good listeners. The October wind cut across the Black Lake like a blade, sending ripples skittering over its obsidian surface. Draco Malfoy pulled his cloak tighter, his breath curling in faint silver wisps before vanishing into the cold. He shouldn't be here, nowhere near this wretched wind-swept shore, where the water lapped with a sound too close to whispering. But there was no refusing Andruella when she fixed you with that cool, imperious stare, and said, Draco, you'll look after Kylam today. So here he stood, watching his 11-year-old cousin skip stones with all the reckless energy of youth, blissfully unaware of the shadows beneath the lake's surface. Do it again, Draco, Kylam called, thrusting a flat slate-gray stone into his cousin's hand. You're better at it, Draco scoffed, but took the stone anyway. Because I had a tutor for skipping stones, of course. It's a lost Malfoy art. Kylam laughed, the sound bright against the dull groan of the wind. Draco flicked his wrist, sending the stone skimming, once, twice, thrice, before it vanished beneath the water. For a moment the lake stilled, then it sang. A low, haunting hum rose from the depths, not loud but impossible to ignore. It wove through the air like mist, liquid and ancient, resonating in Draco's bones. He turned sharply, searching the shoreline. There, near the willow's drooping branches, a figure in a tattered blue cloak knelt in the reeds, head tilted toward the water. Luna Lovegood. She didn't look up. Her fingers trailed the surface, disturbing the song's echo. A wide, dreamy smile touched her lips, as if she'd just heard a secret meant only for her. What's she doing? Kylam whispered. Suddenly quiet. Being ridiculous, most likely, Draco muttered. But his voice lacked its usual bite. The song had unsettled him. It wasn't like anything he'd heard. No spell incantation. No magical creature he recognized. It felt older, forgotten. He took a step forward, then stopped. Luna turned her head slowly, her wide silvery eyes locking onto his. There was no fear in them, no mockery, just that unnerving, unblinking calm. "You hear it too," she said. Not a question. Draco stiffened. "Hear what?" "The singing. It's been growing louder since last moon. They're waking up." "Who?" Calum piped up, eyes wide. "The people of Atlantis," Luna replied, as if stating the weather. "They've been sleeping beneath the lake for centuries, but the veil is thinning. Can't you feel it? The water remembers." Draco scoffed again, louder this time. "Atlantis? That's a children's myth. Even Star. I stopped believing in that at 7. Luna only tilted her head like a curious bird. "Belief isn't required for truth, Draco. It's simply star is star, like the nargles in the mistletoe, or the fact that you're afraid of deep water." He froze. "I am not. You haven't taken your eyes off the shore since you arrived," she noted gently. "And you stand exactly 3 paces from the water's edge, no closer." Draco glanced down, annoyed to find she was right. He shifted, forcing himself forward, only to stumble slightly as the earth beneath his foot gave way with a soft star-crack star, a stone dislodged, tumbling into the lake. The psalm stopped. Silence fell, thick and sudden. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then, from beneath the surface, something glowed, pale blue light pulsing once, twice, like a heartbeat. And in that flicker, Draco thought he saw shapes, tall, slender figures moving through the depths, their limbs trailing like seaweed, their faces obscured by shadow and shimmer. He took a step back. Luna stood, brushing damp leaves from her robes. "They don't like sudden movements," she said, voice soft. "They're watching, waiting." Calum clutched Draco's sleeve. "Can we go now?" Draco opened his mouth to agree, sharp, decisive. But then he looked at Luna. She wasn't afraid. In fact, she looked peaceful. As if the sight beneath the water was not a threat, but a long-awaited greeting. And for the first time, Draco wondered if he was the one who didn't understand the magic at all. The Black Lake was never truly black, not under a full moon. Silver threads shimmered across its surface like molten mercury, broken only by the occasional ripple from something unseen beneath. Luna Lovegood stood at the edge, barefoot in the damp grass, her pale robes fluttering in the night breeze. She held a small, iridescent shell to her ear, lips parted as if listening to a secret the world had long forgotten. Draco Malfoy watched her from a few paces back, arms crossed, cloak pulled tight against the chill. "You're mad, you know that? Standing there like some moonstruck naiad. The giant squid won't save you if you drown." Luna turned, her wide eyes reflecting the moonlight like pools of liquid mercury. "You came," she said, as if surprised. "I knew you would. I came to stop you from getting killed," Draco snapped. "Not to play explorer in a lake full of Grydelows and merfolk who don't take kindly to visitors." She smiled, unfazed. "The singing isn't from the merfolk. It's older, deeper. Can't you hear it?" He listened. The wind, the rustle of reeds, the distant hoot of an owl. "Nothing else. I hear nothing. Not with your ears," she said softly. "With your bones." Before he could retort, she raised her wand and whispered a spell in a language Draco didn't recognize, fluid, lilting, like water over stone. A shimmering bubble formed around her head, then expanded to encase her entire body in a translucent opalescent sphere. The air within glowed faintly blue, and she took a slow breath, testing it. "You can't be serious," Draco said. "I've tested the charm 7 times on newts and a very understanding water vole," Luna replied. "They all survived, and one even sang in harmony." He groaned. "I'm not letting you go down there alone. What if your cousin gets tangled in a kelp forest? What if—" "He's not even here yet," Draco snapped. "And he won't be if you get yourself killed before he arrives." Luna tilted her head, studying him. "You care more than you let on." "I care about not having your ghost haunting the slithering dorms," he muttered, already pulling out his own wand. "Now teach me the charm." She did patiently, pronouncing each syllable like a lullaby. Draco repeated it, stumbling over the cadence, but eventually a weaker version of the bubble formed around him. It flickered once, then steadied. He exhaled, then inhaled, crisp, cool air, tinged with the scent of deep water and ancient stone. Luna stepped forward, her bare toes curling into the mud at the lake's edge. "Ready?" "No," Draco said. "But I'm coming anyway." They stepped into the water together. The cold bit through their robes instantly, but the charm held. Below the surface, the world changed. The moonlight filtered down in fractured columns, illuminating schools of silver fish that darted like scattered coins. Strange plants swayed in the current, their leaves glowing faintly blue or violet. And then, faint, distant, but unmistakable, came the singing. It wasn't words, not exactly. More like echoes of a memory, a chorus of voices rising from the depths, harmonizing in tones that made Draco's chest ache. He froze, treading water inside his bubble. "You hear it now," Luna said, her voice muffled, but clear through the magic. He nodded, unable to speak. She reached out, her fingers brushing his. "It's calling us." Draco hesitated, then let his head close around hers. Her skin was cold, but her grip was steady. Down they went, deeper into the silent, shimmering dark. The lake bed sloped gently, then dropped sharply into a tremp lined with broken pillars and moss-covered arches, ruins too symmetrical to be natural. Carvings spiraled along the stone, depicting figures with webbed hands and crescent moons upon their brows. Luna pointed ahead. A massive gate, half buried in silt, loomed in the gloom. Above it, in weathered script, read a phrase in ancient runes. Draco's breath caught. "That's not Latin." "No," Luna whispered. "It's Atlantean. It says, 'Star, only the willing heart may pass, for the city remembers love.' Star." He looked at her, then at the gate, then back at her moonlit face, glowing with quiet certainty. "I hate riddles," he muttered. "But you're still here," she said. Yes, he thought. "I'm still here." The water pressed in from all sides, cold and heavy, but the charm around them held. Luna's doing, a soft bubble of air and warmth woven from whispered incantations, and something older, something that hummed beneath her fingertips. Draco floated beside her, his pale hair drifting like smoke in the murk, his gray eyes wide with something between awe and dread. Below them, the lake bed sloped downward into darkness, but ahead there, a curve of stone, smooth and impossibly carved, arched from the silt like the ribs of a sleeping giant. "It's real," Luna said, her voice muffled, but clear within the charm. She smiled, not at Draco, but at the ruin, as if greeting an old friend. "I told you they were down here." Draco didn't answer at first. His hand hovered near his wand, tense, as if expecting attack. But the only movement was the slow drift of sand, stirred by unseen currents, and the faint distant echo of that singing, melodic, wordless, rising like breath through water. It had drawn them here, Luna, following the sound like a compass, Draco following her, not for belief, but because his cousin had vanished after swimming too close to the shore one moonless night. "It's not on any map," he murmured. "Not even in the restricted section. Atlantis doesn't want to be found," Luna said simply. "Not by just anyone." She kicked forward, gliding toward the archway. Draco followed, the charm stretching to accommodate them both. As they neared, the stone revealed itself in greater detail. Carvings spiraled along the surface, intricate and fluid, depicting figures with webbed hands and eyes like polished silver, standing beneath a city of crystal spires. The script was alien, yet Draco felt it prickle at the edges of his mind, as if trying to speak. Luna reached out, brushing the stone with her palm. A pulse of blue light flared beneath her touch, rippling outward like a heartbeat. The sand around the arch shifted, revealing more of the structure. Steps descending, walls flanked by broken columns, and beyond the faint glimmer of a dome half buried in silt. "They're still here," she whispered. "Not ghosts, not myths, waiting." Draco swallowed. Waiting for what? For someone to remember. She turned to him, her eyes luminous in the dim glow. "The wards are weak, but they recognize magic. True magic, not just spells. They feel intention." He frowned. "And what's our intention? To listen." She stepped through the arch, and to return what was taken. The moment she passed beneath the stone, the water stilled. The singing grew louder, not from one direction, but from everywhere, surrounding them in layered harmonies that tugged at something deep in Draco's chest. The dome ahead shimmered, its surface now visible,
cracked, ancient, but alive with veins of light that pulsed in time with the song. Then the ground trembled.
Sand erupted in plumes as something beneath the ruin shifted. Draco seized Luna's arm, pulling her back, but she didn't resist the movement, only watched, calm, as the dome cracked down the center. From within, a column of water rose, spinning, and within it, suspended like a memory, hovered a sphere of liquid light. "It's a memory ward," Luna breathed. A story sealed in magic. Draco's breath caught. Images flickered in the light, towers rising from the sea, people with gills and silver hair walking among merfolk and kilkwalkers, a pact sworn in starlight, then fire from the sky. A curse, a city sinking, screaming into the deep. They weren't destroyed, Luna said softly. They were silenced, hidden, and Hogwarts was built above it, Draco realized. This magic, it's beneath the school. If it wakes, it could tear the foundations apart. She looked at him, unafraid. Or it could heal what was broken. He stared at her, at the way the light played across her face, how the weight of centuries didn't crush her, but seemed to lift her, like she'd been born for this moment. "For this, what do we do?" he asked. Luna took his hand. "We go in." The air beneath the surface was thick with silence, broken only by the low hum of ancient magic pulsing through the ruins. Draco Malfoy clenched his jaw, his fingers tightening around the gillyweed stem tucked behind his ear. The transformation had worked. Gills flared at his neck, his limbs moved with unnatural grace. But the cold still seeped into his bones, sharper than any winter at Malfoy Manor. Ahead of him, Luna Lovegood drifted like a silver shadow, her pale hair fanning around her like moonlight caught in water. She didn't look back, but he knew she sensed him. She always did. They had passed the kelp forests hours ago, where giant grindylows once stirred in the dark fronds, now eerily still. The lake bed sloped downward into a canyon of crumbling stone arches, half-buried columns etched with runes that shimmered faintly, as if breathing. Between them shadows coiled. Then the singing returned. It wasn't a song of words, but of longing, deep, resonant tones that vibrated through the water like chords struck on a sunken harp. Draco shivered, not from cold. The sound tugged at something buried beneath years of pride and polished disdain. He glanced at Luna. Her eyes were closed, her lips parted as if drinking in the melody. "They're not ghosts," she murmured, the words bubbling like silver threads. "They're guardians, the ones who stayed behind when Atlantis fell." Draco scoffed, or tried to. The sound came out distorted underwater. "Guardians or wraiths? Because that's what they look like. Hungry ones." Before she could answer, the water thickened. From the cracks in the ruins, figures emerged, translucent, elongated, their limbs trailing like smoke. Their faces were indistinct, shifting, but their eyes, pale and pupilless, fixed on the intruders. The runes on the stones flared crimson. The song twisted, turning jagged, warning. Draco drew his wand. "Stay behind me." Luna didn't move. Instead, she drifted forward, hands open at her sides. "They don't want to harm us," she said, voice calm. "They're afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Us." "Of forgetting," she whispered. "They remember the fall, the fire in the sky, the water rushing in, the silence after. They guard the threshold so no one disturbs what's left." One of the wraiths lunged, its form darting like ink spilled in current. Draco raised his wand. "Star Defindo Star." But Luna's hand closed gently over his wrist. "No violence," she said. "It will only feed their fear." He hesitated, jaw tight. "Then what do you suggest? A chat over tea?" She smiled. A fragile, luminous thing underwater. Then she began to sing. Not in words, not in any language, Draco knew, but in the same haunting tones that had drawn them here. Her voice wove through the water, like light through crystal, soft, sorrowful, and full of recognition. The wraiths stilled. One by one their hollow eyes dimmed from red to silver. Draco stared. "You're speaking their language?" "Not speaking," she said, still singing softly. "Remembering with them." The lead wraith drifted closer, its form flickering like candlelight. It reached out not to attack, but to touch Luna's outstretched hand. Where they met, the water shimmered gold. And then a memory, not Luna's, not Draco's, flashed in the space between them. A city of spires rising from the sea, glowing with magic older than Hogwarts, older than time. Children laughing in streets of pearl. Scholars whispering spells into coral towers. Then, fire. A star falling from the sky, the sea roaring in. The vision faded. The wraith bowed its head. The runes on the archway ahead turned from red to blue. Luna turned to Draco, her eyes bright. "They'll let us pass, but only if we go together." He swallowed, the gillyweed's magic making his throat burn. "You knew this would happen?" She shook her head. "I hoped." He looked at the wraiths, now retreating into the ruins like mist. Then at her, so certain, so unafraid. For the first time, the weight of his own fear felt small, petty. "Fine," he said, voice rough. "But if one of them tries to possess me, I'm blaming you." She laughed, the sound bubbles rising like stars. "I'd expect nothing less, Draco Malfoy." And hand in hand they stepped through the archway, into the heart of what was lost. The water pressed in from all sides, cold and heavy, but the charm on their robes held firm, forming a thin, shimmering barrier between them and the abyss. Luna floated just ahead, her hair drifting like silver seaweed in the slow current, her fingers brushing the surface of a massive oyster, shell embedded in the silt. It opened with a soft creak, revealing a sphere of soft blue light nestled within, pulsing alive. She plucked it gently, and the glow spread across her palm like spilled ink, warm despite the depth. "Pearl lanterns," she whispered, her voice muffled by the water, but clear in Draco's ears, as if carried on a private current. "They remember the light of Atlantis. They've been waiting." Draco hovered behind her, jaw tight, wand half-raised. He didn't trust the silence, the way the lake usually teemed with grindylows and giant squid, but here, nothing. Not even a school of fish. Just ruins rising in the gloom, columns of coral-encrusted stone, arches draped in kelp-like mourning veils, and streets paved with cracked marble, now cracked further by time and root. The pearls in Luna's hands brightened as she moved forward, and more began to glow in response. Hundreds, then thousands, nestled in shells, cradled in the hollows of statues, strung along ancient railings like forgotten holiday lights. He followed, his breath shallow. "You said this was just a myth, and you said Nargles weren't real," she replied, turning to him with a smile that made the light dance across her face. "Yet here we are." The city unfolded before them, grand and sorrowful. Towers spiraled into the murk above, their upper levels lost to shadow. Mosaics of sea glass and abalone still shimmered on the walls, depicting robed figures with webbed fingers, their eyes star-shaped, raised toward a sun that no longer touched them. Draco reached out, brushing a crumbling wall, and a memory, not his, flickered behind his eyes. Laughter like chimes, a sky of liquid gold, a song rising from 1,000 throats. He pulled back, heart pounding. "That wasn't me." "No," Luna said softly, "but the city remembers. It speaks through touch, through light, through song." And then fate at first, it came, a melody, wordless and haunting, rising from the depths below, not from any mouth, but from the water itself, vibrating through their bones. Draco clenched his fists. "That's what we heard from the shore. That's what's been calling." Luna nodded, her eyes closed, as if listening to a friend. "They're not lost, just sleeping." The city sank when the magic failed, when the people turned on each other, but the heart still beats. And it's waking. A tremor ran through the seabed. Sand plumed upward. From the center of the ruins a great dome cracked open like a flower, revealing a column of pale light shooting upward, dimmed by centuries of silt but undeniably alive. Around it, statues of merfolk with human eyes turned their faces toward the glow, arms outstretched. "We shouldn't be here," Draco said, voice low. "This is dangerous. That light, it feels like raw magic." "Everything that matters is dangerous," Luna said, drifting closer. "But it's not angry. It's lonely." He wanted to argue, to grab her wrist and pull her back to the surface, back to dry stone and predictable dangers. But then she turned to him, the pearl light catching in her lashes, and he saw not madness, not delusion, but a quiet certainty that unsettled him more than any curse. "You came to protect your cousin," she said, "but maybe you were meant to find this instead." The song deepened, weaving through the ruins, and for the first time, Draco felt it, not as a threat, but as an invitation. The pearls around them pulsed in time with his heartbeat. And in that moment, surrounded by the ghosts of a drowned world, he took her hand. The water was colder here, thick with silence and the weight of centuries. Luna hovered just above the silt-covered floor of the vast hall, her silver-blue robes rippling like moonlight on still water. Around her, towering statues rose from the lake-bed, their forms cloaked in long flowing robes carved from stone so pale it seemed to glow. Draco followed behind, his breath a muffled rhythm in the enchanted bubble around his head, his gray eyes scanning the figures with wary precision. They stood in a perfect circle, each one facing inward, hands folded as if in prayer or warning. "They're not just statues," Luna whispered, her voice echoing strangely through the water, soft as a sigh caught in glass. "Look at their faces. Do you see it?" Draco drifted closer to one, his fingers brushing the cold surface. The stone was unnervingly smooth, too smooth for erosion, too detailed for ancient craftsmanship. The face was serene, ageless, neither young nor old, but caught somewhere in between. The eyes, closed, seemed to hold a pulse beneath the surface, like light trapped under ice. "They look alive," he admitted, voice tight. "Because they are," Luna said, turning slowly to face the center of the circle. "Not fully, not anymore, but part of them still dreams. This is the silent court, the keepers of the last promise of Atlantis." A current stirred, though there was no visible motion in the water. One of the statues, the tallest, at the far end, tilted its head, just slightly. A crack thin as a hairline ran down its cheek. Draco drew his wand instinctively. "Luna, no," she said gently, placing a hand over his wrist. Her touch was calm, grounding. "They're not waking, just remembering. We're echoes to them, a whisper of the world above." He hesitated, then lowered his wand, though his muscles stayed taut. "You knew this would happen." "I hoped," she corrected. "The songs I heard, they weren't calling for rescue. They were mourning. These were the ones who stayed behind when the city sank. They bound themselves to the deep, to guard the heart of Atlantis, to keep it from rising too soon, or too late," Draco murmured, remembering the prophecy etched into the coral tablet they'd found days before. "Star, when the moon bleeds, and the silent ones weep, the drowned crown shall call its heirs, and the hulls of the living shall tremble." Star. Luna swam toward the center of the circle, where a dais of black stone rose, cracked and overgrown with luminous seaweed. Atop it lay a circlet of twisted silver, set with a gem that pulsed like a heartbeat, deep indigo, shifting like water under starlight. "That's it," she breathed. "The crown of tides." Draco's stomach dropped. "You can't be thinking of touching it." She turned to him, her eyes wide and unafraid. "Someone has to. The magic here is fading. If the court collapses, the seal breaks. And if it breaks without guidance, Hogwarts will sink into the lake, as Atlantis sank into the sea." He stared at her, the truth of it settling like stone in his chest. The missing creatures, the Nihats, the Grinduos, the ancient Kelpies, they hadn't been taken. They'd been pulled, drawn back into the deep by a magic waking from long slumber, and Luna, with her quiet certainty and sky-colored eyes, meant to answer its call. "You're mad," he said, but there was no heat in it, only awe and something softer, something he didn't yet have a name for. She smiled, just a little, only a little, like the moon. A low chime resonated through the water, no sound, but a vibration in the bones, in the blood. The statue's eyes flickered open, one by one, revealing depths of shifting silver. Not stone, never just stone. The court was watching. The water was colder here, thick with silence and memory. Luna moved through it like a dream, her silver blonde hair drifting around her face like seaweed in a slow current. Her wide, pale eyes reflected the faint glow of enchanted kelp clinging to the crumbling stone arches around them. Draco followed close behind, his teeth clenched against the chill, his wand clutched tight in one hand. The bubblehead charm wavered at the edges of his vision, a fragile shield against the crushing depth. They had descended past the merfolk colony, past the skeletal remains of what might have once been towers, and now stood before a great circular opening in the lake bed. Stone steps, worn smooth by centuries of unseen currents, spiraled downward into darkness. Carvings adorned the walls,
serpentine figures with human eyes, constellations Draco didn't recognize, and script that shimmered faintly, as though inked in crushed starlight.
"This is it," Luna said, her voice muffled by the water, yet clear in Draco's mind. "The sunken library. Atlantis kept its truths here, where only the patient could find them." Draco exhaled slowly, watching the bubbles spiral upward like trapped spirits. "You're certain this isn't just a pile of soggy parchment and bad decisions?" Luna turned to him, smiling. "Everything worth finding begins that way." She stepped forward, and the water seemed to part for her, the ancient magic recognizing her intent. Draco hesitated, his instincts screaming to turn back. But the image of his cousin, wide-eyed and trembling after vanishing for 3 days near the lake's edge, kept him moving. She had whispered of voices, of songs that call from below. And Luna had listened. The library opened into a vast domed chamber. Shelves, carved from black coral, and reinforced with silver veins, rose from floor to ceiling, curving with the architecture like the ribs of some long-dead leviathan. Scrolls rested within, their edges frayed but intact, encased in glass-like bubbles that repelled water and time alike. Bioluminescent moths, no larger than a fingernail, flitted between them, their wings pulsing with soft blue light. Luna reached out, gently pressing her palm to a central pedestal. It lit from within, veins of gold spreading across the floor, illuminating symbols that shifted and realigned. Words formed in the water itself, hovering like ghosts. "Star, when the song returns and the sky weeps silver, the city shall stir." Star, Draco frowned. "The sky weeps silver. What in Merlin's name does that mean?" Luna tilted her head, studying the script. "The lunar eclipse. It happens in 3 days. They believe the moon's tears would awaken the Heartstone, the source of Atlantis' power. And if it wakes," she turned to him, her expression unreadable, "if it's awakened with balance, the city might rise gently, like a dream remembered. If not," she trailed off, her fingers brushing a nearby scroll, "there's a warning. He who seeks dominion over the deep shall drown the world in pride." Draco's stomach tightened. He thought of his father's vaults, of the old pure-blood mantras whispered behind closed doors, of power, legacy, control. "That sounds like someone we know," he muttered. Luna unsealed the scroll, carefully drawing it from its case. The moment it was free, the chamber trembled. Dust and silt spiraled in the water, and from the far end of the library, something shifted, a shadow, long and coiled, slipping between the shelves. Draco raised his wand. "We're not alone." Luna didn't look away from the scroll. "They're not here to harm. They're the keepers. The ones who stayed behind to guard the truth." The shadow resolved into the shape of a creature. Part eel, part serpent, with eyes like polished obsidian. It circled them once, then bowed its head before vanishing into the dark. Luna exhaled. "They trust us." Draco lowered his wand, but his heart still pounded. "You really believe we can do this? That we can stop whatever's coming without setting off some ancient curse?" She looked at him then, really looked, her gaze soft, certain. "I believe in you, Draco. Not because you're a Malfoy, but because you chose to come." The words settled in his chest, warmer than any charm against the cold. He didn't answer, but when she reached for his hand, he let her take it. The water pressed in from all sides, thick and cold, muffling the world above. Luna Lovegood moved with a dreamer's grace, her silver-blonde hair floating like seaweed in the current, her eyes wide and unafraid. Beside her, Draco Malfoy clenched his jaw, the gillyweed bitter on his tongue, its gills flaring at his neck, with each pulse of effort. His cousin, little Cassiopeia, Cassie, clung to his arm, her breath coming quick and shallow beneath the bubble charm. They had crossed into the ruins now, arches of coral-encrusted stone rising like broken teeth from the silt. Carvings, worn smooth by centuries of tides, spiraled along the columns, serpentine figures entwined with stars, constellations that didn't exist in the sky above. Luna pointed ahead, her fingers brushing a glyph that shimmered faintly blue. "They're close," she whispered, the words bubbling up in a slow, watery chime. "The song isn't just memory. It's a call." Draco wanted to scoff, to say that songs couldn't call anything, that Atlantis was a children's tale. But the lake had been restless for weeks. The Marrows had fled the deeper trenches. A grindy low carcass, drained of magic, had washed ashore near Hagrid's hut. And the singing, he'd heard it too. Late at night,
drifting through the open windows of the Slytherin dormitory, not loud, but insistent, like a lullaby sung in a language just beyond understanding. Cassie tugged his sleeve, her eyes wide. He followed her gaze. Beneath them, the seabed split open. A shockwave rippled through the water, sending silt spiraling in dark clouds. From the fissure rose a shape so vast, it defied sight at first. A coiling spine of living obsidian, armored in runes that pulsed like slow heartbeats. Then came the head, serpentine, but crowned with antlers of glowing coral, eyes like drowned moon. It uncurled with the patience of tectonic plates, and the water itself seemed to hum in reverence. Draco's breath caught. His wand twitched in his grip, but Luna placed a hand over his, her touch calm, certain. "It's not attacking," she said. "It's watching." The creature, a guardian, ancient and terrible, lowered its gaze. Not to their hands, not to their wands, but to their chests. Its eyes softened, the pale light within them shifting like tides. Cassie whimpered, pressing closer to Draco. "It sees fear," Luna murmured. "But not just fear. It sees what's beneath." The guardian exhaled, a stream of silver bubbles that formed shapes as they rose. A blooming flowered, a child's hand, a phoenix in flight. Then it turned to Draco, and the runes along its spine flared crimson. Draco stiffened. I don't... But the creature didn't strike. It tilted its great head, and for the first time, Draco felt truly seen. Not as a Malfoy, not as a Slytherin. Not even as the boy who had once made cruel jokes in the corridors. It saw the nights he lay awake, wondering if blood could ever be washed clean. It saw the way he had shielded Cassie from the cold when they crossed the lake. It saw the doubt, yes, but also the quiet, stubborn will to do something right, just once. A low thrum vibrated through the water, not threatening, but thoughtful. Then the guardian turned to Luna. Its eyes turned deep violet, like twilight over water. The runes dimmed, the coral crown glowing gently. A sound began not from its mouth, but from the water itself, a single pure note that resonated in Draco's bones. It was the same note from the song, the one that had haunted the edges of his dreams. Luna smiled, tears trailing like pearls in the current. "You remember us," she whispered. The creature bowed its head just once. Then it sank back into the fissure, the stone closing behind it like a sealed tomb. The water stilled. Above, the first specks of starlight pierced the surface. Cassie let out a shuddering breath. Draco looked at Luna, her face illuminated by the fading glow of the runes. "You knew it would happen," he said, voice rough. She shook her head. "I hoped. Guardians don't judge by spells, they judge by hearts. And yours, it's softer than you pretend." He didn't answer, but as they began the slow ascent, his hand found hers in the dark, and he didn't let go. The water pressed in around them, thick and cold, yet breathable, magic holding the ocean at bay, in a shimmering bubble that clung to their bodies like a second skin. Luna floated just ahead of Draco, her silver-blonde hair drifting like sea silk in the slow current. Her wide, dreamy eyes reflected the faint bioluminescent glow of the coral-encrusted ruins, rising all around them, twisted spires, archways choked with anemones, statues with faces worn smooth by centuries of tide. Somewhere deep below, the singing returned, a haunting, wordless melody that spiraled up through the water like smoke. Draco shivered, though not from the cold. The song tugged at something in his chest, something he'd spent years locking away. He glanced at Luna, who was tracing her fingers along a carved stone tablet covered in glyphs that pulsed faintly blue. "They're waking up," she whispered, more to the water than to him. "The city remembers us. I thought we were supposed to be hiding," he muttered, hand tight on his wand. His reflection in a pool of still water below showed a face too pale, too tense, not announcing our arrival to every ancient curse in the Atlantic. Luna turned to him unfazed. "You can't hide from truth, Draco. Not down here. The water knows what we carry." He frowned. "And what, exactly, am I carrying?" She studied him a moment, then smiled, soft, knowing. "Conflict, fear. But also, hope. It's faint, but it's there." Before he could respond, the ground trembled. Sand and silt billowed upward as the ruins shifted, stone grinding on stone. From the center of the plaza, a column of light erupted, coalescing into a figure. Tall, translucent, woven of water and starlight. Its eyes opened, and Draco felt his breath catch. The Guardian. It did not speak, not with words, but a voice, deep, resonant, filled their minds, ancient as the seafloor. Star, you are not both seekers of power. One comes burdened by legacy, the other guided by light. Star, Luna bowed her head. We mean no harm. We seek only understanding. The Guardian turned its gaze to Draco. He stiffened, every instinct urging him to raise his wand, to defend, to fight. But something in that gaze, calm, patient, held him still. It wasn't judgment he saw, but recognition. Star, you stand at the edge of two paths. Star, the voice murmured in his mind. Star, one leads back to the shadows you know. The other leads into the unknown, but it is not without courage. Star. Draco swallowed. I didn't come for prophecy. I came for family. And Star. And yet you stayed. Star, the Guardian replied. Star, even when you could have left. Even when fear whispered to turn back. Star. Luna reached for his hand, her fingers cool and sure. He's protecting more than just his cousin now. The Guardian's form shifted, softening. A ripple passed through its body, like wind across a lake. Star, the city stirs not to destroy, but to remember. Atlantis was not drowned by the sea. It was hidden by choice, by those who loved the world too much to see it torn apart by greed. Star. Draco looked down at the glyphs. They were changing, rearranging beneath the water, forming new patterns. So the prophecy, it's not about rising, it's about returning. Star, not with force, Star, the Guardian said. Star, but with balance, with unity. The magic here responds to intent. It feels your heart, Draco Malfoy. And it does not find you wanting. Star. He blinked, startled. That's impossible. I've made mistakes. I've hurt people. Star. And yet you carry remorse. Not guilt as a weight, but as a guide. That is rare. Star. Luna squeezed his hand. Maybe you're not who you thought you were. The singing rose again, clearer now, weaving through the ruins like threads of silver. The Guardian reached out, not to touch, but to offer a single glowing orb, pulsing like a heartbeat, suspended in the water. Star, take this, not as a weapon, as a key. Know this, the city will not rise for kings or conquerors, only for those who listen. Star. Draco hesitated, then reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the light, warmth spread through him. Memories not his own. Laughter beneath a sunken sky, hands clasped in peace. A people who chose exile over war. And for the first time in years, he felt seen. The pressure of the deep pressed against Draco's chest, like an invisible hand, his breath coming shallow and sharp, even though the silvery bubble surrounding them should have made breathing effortless. Around him, the world shimmered. Walls of coral-encrusted stone spiraled upward into the gloom, carved with symbols that pulsed faintly, as if breathing. The water beyond the bubble swilled with ghostly currents, and in the distance the singing returned, not loud but deep, resonant, like voices carried through stone and time. It's not just ruins, Luna whispered, her voice soft against the strange hush of the underwater city. She stepped forward, her bare feet leaving no mark on the moss-slick cobbles. It's alive. Draco frowned, glancing at her. Alive? This place has been under the lake for centuries. Nothing could survive this. But magic isn't survival, she said, turning to him with eyes wide and unafraid. It's memory, and memory remembers how to sing. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Not when the air inside the bubble tasted faintly of salt and lightning, and the symbols on the walls flared in response to Luna's presence, glowing a soft, opalescent blue. He reached out, fingers trembling, and brushed the nearest carving, a spiral within a spiral, like a wave folding into itself. The moment he touched it, a ripple passed through the water, and the singing deepened, shifting into something that sounded almost like words. "Do you hear that?" he asked, pulling his hand back as if burned. Luna nodded. "They're welcoming us, or warning us," Draco muttered, instinctively stepping closer to her. His wand was clenched in his fist, but its usual warmth felt distant, as if the magic here didn't recognize it, or didn't care. They moved forward, the city unfolding around them like a dream, half remembered. Towers twisted like seashells rose from the lake bed, their windows dark but watchful. Strange plants, bioluminescent fronds, the color of moonlight, drifted in the currents, pulsing gently as though keeping time with the song. Draco's boots echoed faintly on the stone, a sound that didn't belong, and he wondered if the city resented the intrusion. Then ahead the street opened into a wide plaza, and its center stood a great fountain, long silent, its basin filled with silt and drifting petals of light. But atop it, cradled in the arms of a stone figure with eyes like polished abalone, was a crystal. It hummed, barely audible, and as they approached, it began to glow. Luna exhaled, her breath misting in the cool air. "The heart of Atlantis," she said. "It's not a weapon, it's a lullaby." Draco stared. "A what?" "A psalm to keep the city sleeping," she explained, stepping toward the fountain. "But it's weakening. That's why the creatures are disappearing. The magic is reaching out, trying to feed. It's hungry for connection." "And if it wakes?" he asked. So he already feared the answer. Luna turned to him, her face gentle in the crystal's shimmer. "Then the world above will tremble. Hogwarts stands on ancient ley lines, Draco. If Atlantis rises, the school will crack like an egg." He swallowed hard. "So we stop it. We understand it first," she corrected. "You can't silence a song just because you don't understand the words." He wanted to argue. He wanted to grab her wrist and pull her back to the surface, back to dry land and sensible dangers. Death Eaters, curses, anything but this quiet, aching magic that made his chest tight in ways he couldn't name. But then she reached out, not for the crystal, but for his hand. Her fingers were cool, steady. "Will you listen with me?" He hesitated. Malfoys didn't trust, didn't reach, didn't stay. But beneath the lake, in a city that remembered how to sing, something in him cracked open. Slowly he laced his fingers through hers. And together they listened. The water pressed in from all sides, cold and thick as syrup, but Luna Lovegood moved through it as if dancing. Bubbles spiraled from her lips in soft silver ribbons, and she hummed a tune that didn't belong to the surface world, something ancient, curling like a lullaby sung by the moon to the sea. Draco Malfoy followed, tethered to her by a thin enchanted rope that glowed faintly blue, its magic calibrated to keep them from drifting apart in the lake's murky depths. His lungs burned, though the gillyweed he'd swallowed kept them functional, and his pale fingers clenched around his wand, its tip casting a narrow beam that cut through the gloom. Ahead the lake bed sloped downward, vanishing into shadow. But Luna didn't hesitate. She drifted forward, her silver hair fanning like seaweed, her wide eyes reflecting the dim light like a creature born to this darkness. "Do you hear them?" she mouthed, her voice reaching him through the water as if whispered directly into his mind. Draco frowned. He'd been hearing the song since last week, faint, fragmented, rising through the stone floors of the castle at night. At first he'd thought it was the wind or Peeves playing tricks, but then the botruckle in the herbology greenhouse vanished. Then a Hungarian horntail feather was found tangled in the reeds by the shore, though the dragon was locked in a reserve enclosure miles away. Then the thestral herd went silent, and Luna had appeared in the Slytherin common room, calm as starlight, saying, "They're calling, the ones below, they're not lost, they're taken." He'd laughed. Then she showed him the map, the one she'd drawn in ink, made from crushed mooncalf bones and squid ink, pulsing with hidden currents. And now here they were, descending into the abyss where no student had ever gone willingly. Wait, he thought back, the magic of their tether amplifying thoughts into words. Something's ahead. Luna paused. Her humming faded. From the dark below, a sound rose, not song this time, but a low, resonant thrum, like the beating of a colossal heart buried in silt. Then faint at first, came voices, layered, echoing, speaking in a language that twisted like eels through Draco's skull. He couldn't understand the words, but he felt them, longing, sorrow, and something sharper, hungrier. "They're not singing to us," Luna sent, her mental voice soft. "They're singing to what's trapped. Trapped. Creatures don't vanish into thin water, Draco. They're pulled. They're drawn down by something that remembers what it once was." He glanced around. The beam of his wand caught the edge of something carved into the lake bed, stone, impossibly smooth, etched with spirals that pulsed faintly with blue light. A column, half buried, rose from the mud, its top lost in darkness. And beyond it, more shapes, archways, domes, the skeletal remains of a city sleeping beneath centuries of silt. Atlantis, Luna breathed, her thought a sigh. It's real.
Draco's pulse hammered. This wasn't possible. Atlantis was myth, a story told to frightened children who swam too far from shore. And yet, the architecture was nothing like wizarding design. No arches, no towers. This was fluid, organic, as if grown rather than built. Then he saw it. Through a crumbling archway, something moved. Not fish, not plant. A shape, furred, with too many limbs, twitched against a wall of glowing crystal. A Kneazle, its eyes wide and unblinking, body encased in a lattice of shimmering energy. "They're alive," Luna said, her voice trembling with relief. "But held. Why?" Draco asked. "The song isn't a call," she answered slowly. "It's a key, and something down here is using it to open doors that should stay closed." A crack echoed through the water. Not sound, but vibration. The ground beneath them trembled. The crystal holding the Kneazle flared, then dimmed. And from deeper in the ruins the singing changed. Higher now, urgent, almost pleading. "We're not alone," Luna whispered. And in the distance, something vast began to stir. The air beneath the lake was thick with silence, broken only by the soft hum of ancient magic vibrating through the stone. Luna Lovegood floated forward, her silver-blonde hair drifting like seaweed in the current, her eyes wide with quiet reverence. Draco Malfoy followed, his wand clutched tight, the tip glowing faintly blue. Around them, the ruins of what might have once been a grand city rose from the silt, towers bent like old trees, arches choked with coral, and streets paved in stone that still shimmered with enchanted light when touched. They had been walking for what felt like hours, though time was strange down here, stretched and slow. Draco's lungs burned, though the water-breathing charm held strong. He kept glancing at Luna, who moved with a calm certainty that unsettled him. She didn't flinch at the shadows that shifted in the corners of his vision, nor at the distant, haunting melody that pulsed through the water, half song, half memory. And then they saw it. Spanning a deep chasm was a bridge of white marble, impossibly preserved. Its surface gleamed under the faint light, carved with delicate patterns of waves and stars. On either end stood columns shaped like twisting shawls, crowned with glowing pearls the size of fists. "It's beautiful," Luna whispered, her voice echoing strangely in the enchanted water. Draco narrowed his eyes. "Too beautiful. Nothing down here stays intact for centuries without a reason." She turned to him, her gaze steady. "Maybe it was meant to be found." He scoffed, but didn't argue. They stepped onto the bridge. The first few paces were solid. Then halfway across, the stone beneath Draco's foot gave a soft star crack. Star. He froze. Luna stopped, turning slowly. "We should go back," he said, voice low. But before she could answer, the bridge shuddered. A hairline fracture split the marble, but before she could answer, the bridge shuddered. A hairline fracture split the marble, racing toward the center. With a silent groan, the middle third of the bridge collapsed into the abyss below, vanishing into darkness. Draco stumbled back, heart hammering. Luna hovered at the edge, peering down. "It's deep," she said. "Too deep to swim around. We're trapped," he muttered, turning to scan the ruins behind them. "There's no other way." Luna tilted her head, thoughtful. "No, we just have to cross." He gave a dry laugh. "Brilliant. Did you bring a rope? A flying carpet? Or perhaps you plan to charm the pieces back together?" She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "Hold my hand." "What?" "If we move together step for step, we can balance the magic. The bridge isn't just stone. It's alive. It responds to intent." Draco stared at her. "You're mad." "Probably," she said, extending her hand. "But you're still going to take it." He hesitated. The thought of touching her, of trusting her, felt like stepping off a cliff. But the alternative was turning back, and he couldn't face the shame of returning empty-handed, especially not with his cousin's life, possibly hanging in the balance. With a quiet breath, he took her hand. Her fingers were cool, steady. The moment their skin touched, the water around them seemed to still. The fractured edges of the bridge pulsed with a faint golden light. "Don't overthink it," she murmured. "Just walk with me." They stepped forward.
Each footfall sent ripples of light along the broken edges. The stone trembled, but held. Halfway across, Draco felt a shift beneath him, a tile slipping, but Luna squeezed his hand, and the bridge flared brighter, sealing the crack before it could spread. They didn't speak. There was no need. The silence between them was full, of breath, of trust, of something neither could name but both felt growing, like roots in the dark. When they reached the other side, Draco let go slowly, as if releasing something fragile. Luna smiled, small and true. See? Not so impossible. He looked back at the chasm, then at her. You knew that would work? I hoped, she said. Magic likes hope. He exhaled, shaking his head. But for the first time since they'd descended, he didn't feel like an outsider in her world. He felt strangely like he belonged in it. Just a little. Just enough. The mist curled off the surface of the Black Lake, like smoke from a forgotten fire, silver in the weak morning light. Draco stood at the edge, arms crossed, robes pulled tight against the damp chill. He had not wanted to come. He had not wanted any of this. The whispers beneath the water, the vanishing grindylows, the way the giant squid had taken to lurking near the shallows as if afraid. But Astoria was his cousin, only 12, and her name had been whispered in the latest dreamlike chant that drifted up from the depths after midnight. So here he was, waiting for Luna Lovegood. She arrived barefoot, her shoes slung over one shoulder, toes sinking slightly into the wet earth. Her hair was loose, tangled with what looked like dried mooncalf moss, and her eyes, wide, pale, unsettling, were fixed on the lake as though she could see straight through its murky skin. They're singing again, she said softly, not looking at him. Can you hear it? Draco shook his head, though that wasn't entirely true. He'd heard it, faint, echoing, like voices woven through the hum of a seashell. It made his teeth ache. It's just the wind, or some spell gone wrong. Luna smiled, the kind of smile that didn't mock but simply existed, like sunlight on stone. You say that, but your hands are clenched. You're listening, you're afraid. He looked away, jaw tight. I'm not afraid, I'm annoyed. You said this was important. It is. She knelt, pressing her palm flat against the silt. The lake remembers. It carries the weight of centuries. The city beneath. It breathes, and it's waking up. Draco exhaled sharply. Atlantis, you really believe that? I don't believe, she said, tilting her head. I know. The Nargles have been restless. The Thestrals won't come near the east bank. Even the mer people are hiding their young. Something is coming, Draco, and it's not just about Atlantis. It's about balance. About listening to what the world is trying to say. He wanted to scoff, wanted to turn on his heel and walk back to the dry warmth of the slithering common room. But something in her voice, soft, steady, unshaken, held him there. A ripple broke the surface, not from wind or creature, but as if something had stirred far below. Then faintly, the singing returned. This time, he didn't just hear it. He felt it, a vibration in his chest, a pull behind his ribs, like a memory he'd never lived. The notes were wordless, ancient, rising in a spiral of longing and warning. Luna closed her eyes. They're calling for someone, or something, maybe both. Draco swallowed. And you think we're supposed to answer? I think, she said, opening her eyes, that you're already listening. That's the first step. He studied her then, not the odd girl everyone whispered about, but the girl who walked barefoot in the mud without flinching, who spoke to plants and believed in invisible creatures, who saw beauty in what others called nonsense. There was no fear in her, no pretense, only a quiet certainty that shimmered around her like heat from stone. I don't understand any of this, he admitted, voice low. You don't have to understand, she said, standing and brushing silt from her knees. You just have to be willing to see. And for the first time, Draco realized he was. Not the world as it was taught in textbooks or praised in pure-blood circles, but the world as Luna saw it. Strange, alive, full of secrets that hummed beneath the surface, waiting to be heard. He looked at the lake, and for a moment, just a moment, he didn't see darkness. He saw possibility. Tell me what to do, he said. Luna smiled, and it was like dawn breaking behind clouds. Stand with me. That's enough for now. And so he did. The water pressed in from all sides, thick and cold, but the charm Luna had whispered held strong, a bubble of air shimmering around them like a soap film touched by moonlight. Draco adjusted the strap of his satchel, fingers brushing the hilt of the enchanted dagger he'd brought more out of habit than hope. Around them, the lake floor sloped upward into a forest of coral towers and skeletal arches, their shapes blurred by centuries of silt and magic, and ahead, rising like a dream from the dark, was the spire. It stood slender and radiant, carved from a single vein of crystal that pulsed with a slow, rhythmic light, blue, then silver, then soft violet, like a heartbeat beneath the earth. Algae drifted like lace from its edges, and tiny silver fish darted through its translucent ribs, vanishing into its core as if swallowed by light. "It's singing," Luna said, her voice muffled, but clear within the bubble. She stepped forward, bare feet, leaving no print in the silty ground. "Can you hear it?" Draco frowned. He'd heard nothing since they'd descended, only the distant groan of water pressure and the occasional flicker of unseen movement in the dark. But now, faint and layered, like voices woven through glass, a melody curled into his ears. It wasn't in any language he knew, nor entirely human. It rose and fell in harmonics that made his teeth hum and his ribs ache. "It's beautiful," Luna whispered, reaching out. "Don't touch it," Draco snapped, grabbing her wrist. His pulse jumped at the contact. Her skin was cool, but her magic sparked against his like static. She turned to him, eyes wide and unafraid. "It knows me. That's absurd. Is it?" She tilted her head, studying the spire. "It's been waiting. I can feel it, like a book left open, waiting for someone to finish the story." He released her slowly, jaw tight. "You're not making sense." "No," she agreed, smiling faintly. "But the spire is." She touched it. The moment her fingers met the crystal, the light flared, a wave of brilliance rolling outward like a tide. Draco staggered back as the song swelled, no longer distant but all around them, inside them. Visions flickered behind his eyes, a city crowned in water lilies and starlight, towers spiraling into the sky, then the crash of storms, the scream of magic undone, the slow descent into silence. Luna gasped. "They didn't drown," she breathed. "They folded. Into the magic. Into the water." Draco's breath caught. The spire was showing them. No, star telling star them. Memories etched in light and sound. He saw figures in flowing robes, their eyes luminous, chanting as the city sank, not in fear but in surrender. A ritual, a preservation. "They're still here," Luna said, tears tracing silver paths down her cheeks. "Not dead, sleeping, waiting for the right voice." "And you think that's you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pressed her palm flat against the crystal. The light dimmed, then shifted, condensing into a single beam that struck the silt at her feet. The ground trembled. Stones rose, aligning into steps. A doorway, hidden for centuries, split open in the spire's base. Draco stared. "You've awakened it." Luna turned to him, her face glowing with a quiet certainty. "No, it awakened Star Me Star," he wanted to argue, to pull her back, to scream that this was madness, Atlantis, prophecies, singing towers, but the truth pressed against his skin like the water itself. This was real, and she was no longer just the odd girl from Ravenclaw. She was something else now, something ancient, and he couldn't look away. "I have to go in," she said, "then I'm coming with you." She smiled, small and grateful. "I hoped you'd say that." Hand in hand they stepped into the light. The wind off the Black Lake carried it again, soft, shimmering, like silver threads pulled through water. Luna Lovegood stood at the shore, barefoot in the damp grass, her robes dusted with frost despite the late spring warmth, her head tilted slightly, as if listening to a secret only she could hear. Draco Malfoy watched her from a few paces behind, arms crossed, his breath curling in white wisps before him. "They're clearer tonight," Luna murmured, not turning. "Like echoes trying to remember their names." "They're star not star echoes," Draco said, voice low. "And they're not singing for fun. Something's wrong. The Thestrals haven't been seen near the forest's edge in days, and Hagrid's mooncows vanished 2 nights ago. No tracks, no signs of struggle." Luna turned then, her wide eyes reflecting the pale moonlight. "They're not vanished. They're called." "Called?" Draco scoffed. "By who? By star what star?" You expect me to believe some drowned city is humming lullabies and stealing magical creatures? Atlantis wasn't drowned, she said softly. It was hidden. The sea protected it when the world turned too loud. But now, something's waking up. Something old. Something that remembers the song. He took a step forward, boots crunching on frost. And you think your little songbook theories are going to save Hogwarts if this thing breaks the surface? Luna didn't flinch. I think ignoring it will destroy us. The song isn't just sound, Draco. It's memory. Magic woven into water. Can't you feel it? It tugs at your ribs like a heartbeat beneath the lake bed. He swallowed. Had Star felt it. Even now, a faint vibration hummed under his skin, a resonance that made his teeth ache and his pulse slow, in unison with the rhythm. He hated that she was right. My cousin's been having nightmares, he admitted, voice tight, about drowning in light, waking up in a city with glass towers and no sky. He's never been near this lake. Luna's expression softened. They're not just singing, they're searching. Something's missing, something that belonged to them. And the magic here, the ley lines beneath Hogwarts, they're starting to resonate. If the song grows louder, the wards could fracture. The school might not survive the unlocking. Unlocking what? She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the faint shimmer of tears in her eyes. The seal, the one that keeps Atlantis sleeping. If it breaks, the city will rise. But magic that old, it doesn't return gently, it reclaims. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant cry of an owl and the whisper of waves against stone. Then, faintly, the psalm rose again, this time in harmony, layered voices weaving through the cold air, syllables in no language Draco knew. Yet Star understood. Star, not in words, but in feeling. Sorrow, longing, and beneath it all, a quiet, relentless hope. Luna reached into the folds of her robes and pulled out a small, smooth stone opal, in hue veined with iridescent blue. I found this at the lake's edge yesterday. It wasn't here before. It wasn't Star anywhere Star before. He reached out, then hesitated. What is it? A key, she whispered. Or maybe a message. It sings when the water calls. As if on cue, the stone pulsed faintly in her palm, light flickering like a heartbeat. The psalm deepened, no longer just above the water, but from star within star, rising from depths no boat had ever mapped. Draco exhaled slowly. If we go down there, we might not come back. Luna smiled, small and sad. And sure. Then we'll have seen something no one else has. And maybe we'll hear the truth before the end. He looked at the lake, at the dark water, trembling with unseen music. Then back at her wild hair haloed in moonlight, her courage, quiet and unshakable. All right, he said. But if we die, I'm blaming you. She laughed, soft as mist. I'd expect nothing less. The surface broke like a held breath released, cold and sharp against their skin as Draco and Luna emerged from the depths of the Black Lake. Moonlight silvered the ripples around them, the water whispering as it slid from their cloaks. Luna surfaced first, her pale hair fanned out like seaweed, her eyes already scanning the shore as if expecting something, or someone waiting in the shadows. Draco followed with a gasp, shivering as the night air bit through his soaked robes. His fingers still tingled from the residual hum of underwater magic, the echoes of the song still vibrating in his bones. We made it, he muttered, more to himself than to her. Luna turned to him, her face serene despite the chill. We found them, Draco. They're real. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The voices, the singing, had been impossible to ignore once they'd passed the ancient wards beneath the lake bed. Melodic, sorrowful and ancient, the sound had curled through the ruins like smoke, threading through crumbling marble pillars and glowing coral arches. And beneath it all, the pulse of something older than Hogwarts itself, a city dreaming in the dark. They climbed onto the rocky bank, their boots squelching as they trudged towards the castle. The lights of Hogwarts flickered in the distance, warm and distant, like stars they weren't meant to reach. Draco wrapped his arms around himself, teeth clenched against the cold, and the dread pooling in his stomach. They had proof. Luna carried a shard of Atlantean crystal in her palm, its core still pulsing faintly within her light, and Draco had pocketed a scrap of parchment covered in symbols that pinchered when touched with water. But he already knew how this would go. The entrance hall was empty save for a flickering torch and the distant echo of footsteps. They dripped across the stone, drawing the attention of a passing prefect. "Malfoy?"
"Lovegood? Where in Merlin's name have you been?" the boy asked, eyes narrowing. "Underwater," Luna said simply. "We've seen Atlantis," the prefect snorted. "Right. And I've had tea with the giant squid." Draco opened his mouth to argue, but Luna touched his arm. "They won't believe us yet," she whispered. "Not until the singing grows louder." They went to Professor McGonagall. She listened, politely at least, with her hands folded on her desk, her expression unreadable behind her spectacles. When Luna presented the crystal, the headmistress examined it carefully, then placed it on a tray beside her inkwell. "It's fascinating, Miss Lovegood. Truly, but underwater cities and ancient prophecies." "It's not a story," Draco cut in, voice tight. "We saw ruins, structures older than the founders. And there's magic down there, powerful magic. It's waking up." McGonagall sighed. "Mr. Malfoy, I understand your concern. And venturing into the lake without permission, without protection, was reckless. You're lucky the Grindylows didn't drag you under." "We weren't attacked," Luna said unfazed. "The creatures avoid that part of the lake. They remember. The city is sealed by enchantments older than written history. But the seal is cracking. The song, it's a warning." McGonagall leaned back. "A song?" "Yes," Luna said. "It calls for balance, for someone to choose, to raise Atlantis or let it sleep forever. If no one answers, the magic will spill into the lake, into Hogwarts." Silence settled. Then McGonagall stood. "I'll have Professor Flitwick examine the crystal, and I expect both of you to stay out of the lake. Is that understood?" Draco clenched his jaw, but nodded. Back in the corridor, he let out a bitter laugh. "Told you they wouldn't believe us." Luna tilted her head, watching him. "Belief isn't always immediate. It grows like mooncalf mushrooms, slowly, in the dark." He looked at her, then really looked. Water still clung to her lashes, and her lips were slightly blue from the cold. But her eyes, wide, clear, unshaken, held no trace of doubt. And for the first time, Draco wondered if believing in something impossible might be the bravest thing a person could do. The air in the hidden chamber beneath the lake was thick with the scent of salt and old parchment, the kind of stillness that made every breath feel like a trespass. Moonlight filtered through enchanted glass, casting silver ripples across stone walls carved with spiraling scripts no living witch or wizard had seen in 1,000 years. Luna knelt in the center of the room, her fingers tracing the edge of a scroll, so ancient its corners crumbled like dried sea foam. The ink shimmered faintly, shifting colors like oil and water. "It's not a destruction," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the distant pulse of the lake. "It's a choice." Draco stood near the archway, arms crossed, his gray eyes scanning the glyphs with a wariness that hadn't faded since they'd breached the final ward. He'd expected trapses, curses, a tomb, but not this. Not quiet, not beauty. The chamber was untouched, as if waiting. "A choice?" he echoed, skeptical. "Cities don't just up and vanish because they feel like it, Lovegood." Luna didn't look up. "They do if they're alive." She unfurled the scroll further, and the ink blued into motion, words flowing like currents, forming images that rose from the surface. A city of coral towers and silver bridges, suspended not beneath the ocean, but star within star it, breathing with the tides. Draco stepped closer despite himself. The vision showed figures moving through the streets, tall and luminous, their skin faintly iridescent, their voices woven into a song that resonated in his bones. "They called themselves the Aquilus," Luna said. "They weren't human, not entirely. They were born of the sea's magic, the first keepers of balance. When the great war between land and water began, when the earth trembled and the sky split with lightning, they saw what would happen. If the magic continued to tear, the world would fracture. So they did something no one remembers." The image shifted. The city began to sink, not in ruin, but in ritual. The people stood hand in hand, singing, their light merging into a single pulse that sank deep into the earth. The ocean swallowed them, not in violence, but in embrace. "They surrendered," Draco said slowly,
the words catching in his throat. They let themselves be forgotten. Yes, Luna said softly. They bound their magic to the heart of the world, beneath the earth's bones. They became the anchor, and the cost was memory. No one was allowed to remember Atlantis, not the name, not the song, not the truth. Because if the world remembered, the seal would break, the balance would tilt. Draco stared at the glowing script. And now the singing is a warning, she finished. Something is pulling at the seal. Creatures disappearing, merpeople, grindylows, even the kelpies from the northern locks. They're not vanishing. They're being drawn down. Something is trying to wake them. He turned to her, the weight of understanding settling like a stone in his chest. And if Atlantis rises, the anchor fails. The magic floods back, unchecked. And Hogwarts, this whole region, it sits on a fault line of old enchantments. It would tear apart, maybe more. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the soft hum of the chamber, and the distant haunting echo of the song from deep below. Draco exhaled, running a hand through his hair. So we stop it. We seal it again. Luna looked at him then, her pale eyes wide and searching. Or we listen. What if they're not meant to stay hidden forever? What if the world is ready? He met her gaze, and something shifted, something quiet and undeniable. He'd come to protect his cousin, to ensure no Malfoy honor was tarnished by lost children or foolish legends. But now, standing in the hush of a forgotten truth, he saw her, really saw her. Not the odd girl, the dreamer, the one they all whispered about, but Luna, who believed in things no one else dared, who trusted the unseen, who had led them here not for glory, but for understanding. If we're wrong, he said, voice low, we destroy everything. She nodded. But if we don't try to understand, we betray them. And ourselves. Outside, the lake stirred. The song grew louder. Not a cry, not a threat, but a plea. And for the first time, Draco felt the weight of wonder. The corridor outside the headmaster's office was silent. The stone walls holding their breath as the gargoyle guardian slid shut behind them. Luna Lovegood stood with her hands folded loosely in front of her, eyes wide and unblinking, staring at the closed door as if it might whisper secrets if given enough time. Draco Malfoy shifted his weight, his cloak pulled tight against the sudden chill that seemed to seep from the floor. The echo of Professor McGonagall's voice still rang in his ears, sharp, final, laced with a concern he hadn't expected. "You're not to return to the lake," she had said, "not one step near the shore after dusk. Is that understood?" Luna had merely tilted her head like a bird listening to a distant call. "The singing grows louder each night, Professor. They're waiting for someone to hear." "And that someone need not be you," McGonagall replied, her fingers pressing briefly against her temple. "The lake is unstable. The wards have frayed in places. No one can explain. Magical creatures vanishing. Hagrid reported a missing Grindylow colony yesterday. A whole colony, Miss Lovegood. Gone. Not scattered. Not hiding. Gone." Draco had said nothing. He didn't believe in sunken cities or underwater prophecies, but he believed in danger, and he believed in the look on his cousin Cassiopeia's face when she'd vanished near the lake's edge 3 nights ago, her wand still clutched in her hand, her boots half submerged in the reeds, her mouth open in silent song. "They took her," Luna whispered now, breaking the silence. "Not drowned. Taken." Draco glanced at her. "McGonagall thinks it's some kind of enchantment. A siren lure. She mentioned ancient water magics, forgotten wards, echoes from the Founder's time." Luna turned to him then, her pale eyes luminous in the dim torchlight. "Echoes don't sing in Atlantean, Draco." He flinched at the use of his first name. No one used it so softly, so without judgment. "Did you understand this language?" "Not in words," she said, lifting a hand as if to catch mist, "but in feeling, like remembering a dream. It's sad, and hungry, and old, older than the castle." He looked away, jaw tightening. "Even if there's something down there, some creature, some magic, McGonagall's right. It's not safe. It's not sane." Luna didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into the pocket of her robes and pulled out a small, iridescent shell, smooth, spiraled, glowing faintly blue at the edges. "I found this in the shallows this morning. It wasn't there yesterday,
And it hums when the moon rises. Draco stared at it. The shell throbs gently in her palm like a heartbeat. That's not from any sea creature I've studied. No, she agreed. It's from beneath. The city stirs. The doors are opening. He exhaled sharply. And if we go back, if we dive again, we could die. Or, she said, we could find Cassiopeia. And the others. He looked at her then, really looked. Not at the rumors, not at the whispers of loony Lovegood, but at the girl who had spent every night since the first song, searching the lake's edge with a lantern made of dragonfly wings and moonlight. The one who left offerings of quartz and silver thread at the water's edge. The one who believed, not blindly but fiercely. "You're mad," he said, voice low. She smiled, just a little, possibly, but so were the ones who first walked into fire and called it light. A silence settled between them, thick with unspoken fear, and something else, something fragile, like the first thread of trust spun between two people who have seen the world crack open and reveal its teeth. Finally Draco stepped closer. "If we go, we do it smart. No more solo dives, no more charms that make you forget your own name. We go together, with gear, with a trace charm. And if I say turn back, we turn back." Luna studied him, then nodded. Together. Above them, a portrait of Dilys Derwent sighed in her frame. "I've seen this before," she murmured. "Young fools drawn to deep magic rarely ends well." Draco looked up. "We're not fools." "No," Luna said softly. "We're the only ones listening." And in the stillness that followed, far below, the lake began to sing again. The wind swept across the surface of the Black Lake, rippling the inky water like a sheet of disturbed obsidian. Luna stood at the shore, bare feet sinking slightly into the damp earth, her pale hair lifting in the breeze as if trying to follow the fragments of song still echoing in her mind. The melody had faded with the dawn, but its memory clung to her like salt to skin. She exhaled slowly, her breath a silver mist in the morning chill. "They're still down there," she said, voice soft, but certain. "The last of them. I can feel it." Draco stood a few paces behind, arms crossed. Cloak pulled tight against the cold. He hadn't slept. The dreams had come again, half-formed images of spiraling towers beneath the waves, faces without eyes, hands reaching from the dark. He told himself it was just the stress, the weight of being pulled into Luna Lovegood's impossible theories. But his skin still prickled with the memory of the song, a sound that wasn't meant for human ears. "You really believe Atlantis is under this lake?" he asked, voice edged with doubt, though it lacked its usual sharpness. Luna turned to him, her large silvery eyes meeting his without hesitation. "Not just believe. No, the magic here is old. Older than Hogwarts, older than the Ministry, older than fear." She stepped forward, her gaze drifting back to the water. "They didn't drown, Draco. They chose to go beneath. When the world grew too loud, too cruel, they sank into silence. But now, something is waking. Something is taking them." Draco frowned. "You said the Grydelos vanished 3 nights ago. Then the merfolk stopped singing their border chants. And the giant squid hasn't been seen since yesterday evening." She nodded. "They're being pulled down, not by force, by sorrow. The song, it's not just calling, it's mourning. And it's growing stronger." He looked at her then, not at the oddness, not at the rumors people whispered about loony Lovegood, but at the quiet strength in her posture, the way her hands trembled not with fear, but with resolve. He thought of his younger cousin Arian, who'd gone missing near the lake's edge last summer. The Ministry called it a tragic accident, but Draco had found a single blue scale near the reeds, too large for any known creature, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Luna had been the only one who didn't laugh when he mentioned it. "I promised I'd help find out what happened to Arian," he said quietly. "Not play explorer for ancient myths." Luna didn't flinch. "The myth is what took him." A long silence settled between them, broken only by the lap of water against stone. A heron cried from the far bank, its voice sharp in the stillness. Draco took a slow breath. "If I go with you, if I help you dive, if I face whatever's down there, I do it on one condition." She tilted her head, waiting. "You tell me everything. No riddles, no vague prophecies unless you actually understand them." Luna smiled, just slightly. "I promise." He studied her face, searching for deceit, for the usual dreamy evasion. But there was only honesty, clear and unflinching.
"All right," he said at last. "I'll keep my word to you." Her smile deepened, and for a moment the cold seemed to lift. "Thank you." He looked away, uncomfortable with the warmth in her voice. "Don't thank me yet. We might not come back." "We will," she said simply. "The lake doesn't want to keep the living, only the lost." Draco didn't answer, but he stepped closer to the water's edge, standing beside her now, shoulder nearly brushing hers. Above them, the first rays of sunlight pierced the clouds, gilding the surface of the lake. For a heartbeat the water shimmered, not with reflection, but with something beneath. A pulse, a breath. Luna reached into her robes and pulled out a small iridescent shell on the silver chain. "This will protect us," she said, offering one end to him. "It listens to the song and answers in kind." Draco hesitated. Then slowly he took the chain, and beneath the waves something stirred. The moon hung low over Hogwarts. A silver coin balanced on the rim of the world, casting long, ghostly fingers across the Black Lake. The water lay still, dark as ink. Yet beneath its surface something stirred, something that hummed in time with the stars. Luna Lovegood stood at the edge, barefoot, her toes curling into the damp earth. She wore a cloak lined with dried rowing leaves, a charm of her own design, and around her neck hung a pendant shaped like a spiral, ancient, out of place, found in a second-hand shop in Hogsmeade, and humming faintly whenever the singing began. Draco Malfoy stood a few paces behind, arms crossed, robes pulled tight against the autumn chill. He hadn't wanted to come back, not really, but the image of his cousin, wide-eyed, trembling, had haunted him since the last dive, when she'd surfaced gasping, babbling about eyes in the dark and voices that called her by name. The Ministry wouldn't act. Not for a missing Slytherin second year, not for rumors of sirens in sunken cities. So here he was, wand clenched in his hand, heart heavier than stone. "They're waiting," Luna said softly without turning. "They've been singing all week, longer, really, since the equinox. The veil between worlds grows thin, Draco." He flinched at the use of his first name. "Still am accustomed to it from her lips, soft as a secret." "You keep saying that, but singing isn't proof. It could be Grindylows, or the merpeople playing tricks." "No," she said, finally turning. Her eyes, wide and pale as moons themselves, caught the light in a way that made him look away. "The merpeople don't sing in Atlantean. I've listened. It's a language of water and starlight. It remembers things." Draco exhaled sharply. "And you just star this." She smiled, a small knowing thing. "I've always known things I can't explain, like how your boots squeak when you're nervous. Or how you pretend not to care when someone's afraid." He stiffened. "I don't pretend." "You don't have to," she said, stepping closer. "I don't need you to be brave, just here." A silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but deep, like the lake itself. Somewhere in the reeds, a frog croaked. Then, beneath it, the singing returned. Faint at first, a ripple in the mind more than the ear. A chorus of voices, low and resonant, rising from the depths in a harmony that tugged at something primal, something star, old star. Draco felt it in his bones, a pull. A memory that wasn't his. Luna closed her eyes, swaying slightly. "They're calling us back. The ruins remember the surface. They want to be found." He watched her, her silver hair lifting in a wind. He couldn't feel, her hands outstretched as if receiving a blessing. And for the first time he didn't see the odd girl they'd all whispered about. He saw someone who walked through the world with her eyes open to things others refused to see. Someone unafraid of the dark because she believed it held wonders, not just terrors. "What do we do?" he asked, voice quieter now. She opened her eyes. "We go down, but not like last time. This time we carry light that doesn't burn. Charms of breath and truth. I've made them." From her pocket she drew 2 small vials, filled with a liquid that shimmered like crushed pearls. "Drink this. It won't taste like anything. Or everything. Depends on who you are." He took the vial, hesitated. "And if it's a trap, then we face it together," she said simply. "Besides, traps usually don't sing in 4-part harmony." A laugh escaped him, short, startled. "You're impossible. And you're still here," she said, smiling. He uncorked the vial. The liquid slipped down his throat like cool mist. For a heartbeat he saw flashes, corridors of coral, towers spiraling into the abyss, a city breathing beneath the waves. Then it passed. Luna stepped into the water. It lapped at her ankles, then her knees. She turned, offering her hand. Draco looked at the lake, at the moon, at the girl who believed in lost cities and singing ghosts. Then, slowly he took her hand. The water closed over them like a sigh. The water pressed in from all sides, thick and cold as liquid obsidian, but Luna's charm held. A shimmering bubble of air that clung to their heads like a second skin. Draco shivered, arms wrapped tight around himself, despite the warming spell he'd muttered under his breath. His silver-blonde hair floated like pale seaweed, and his gray eyes darted through the shifting gloom. Before them, the ruins rose, towering spires of coral-encrusted stone, arches draped in kelp, stairways spiraling into nothing. Atlantis. Luna swam forward with a quiet grace, her fingers trailing over a weathered column. Her wide, dreamy eyes reflected the faint bioluminescence, pulsing from jellyfish drifting like forgotten lanterns. "They're here," she whispered, her voice muffled, but clear inside the bubble. "The drowned kings. Can't you feel them?" Draco scoffed, though his pulse betrayed him. "Feel what? Cold? Dread?" "Yeah, I feel plenty of that." She turned to him, her gaze steady. "Grief. It echoes in the stone, like a song," half remembered. He wanted to argue, to snap that this was madness, dragging them both into the depths for a myth, for her cousin's sake. Yes, but also for Luna's strange certainty that the singing they'd heard from the lake's surface wasn't merfolk or graudulos, but something older, something lost. Then the statues moved. At first, it was only a ripple, a shift in the silt beneath a towering figure carved from black basalt. Its face was long and noble, eyes hollow, crowned with a circlet of tarnished silver. Then another, and another, along the avenue, kings in frozen procession, their hands clasped over their chests, their robes petrified into stone folds. One by one, their heads turned. Draco drew his wand, breath-catching. "Luna, don't," she said softly, placing a hand on his arm. "They're not dangerous. Not unless we mean harm." The tallest of the statues stepped down from its plinth. Stone scraped stone, but no sound reached them, only the deep, eerie silence of the deep. As it moved, the water around it shimmered, and the figure dissolved into a wraith-like form, translucent and glowing with a pale blue light. Its crown remained, real and cold, hovering above wisps of spectral hair. "You have come," it said, its voice like waves through a cave, mortal breath in a dead world. Luna bowed her head. "We seek understanding. The song, it calls, and creatures vanish. Is it you?" The king, spectral now, drifted closer. His eyes, once empty, now held galaxies of sorrow. "We are bound by pride, by magic gone wrong. We sank our city to save it from war. But the spell required a price. Our lives, our rest, our peace." Another figure emerged. A queen, her face lined with ancient grief. "We sing to warn. The magic stirs. The seal weakens. If the heart of Atlantis wakes before the stars align, the lake will boil, the castle will fall." Draco stared, his defiance crumbling. "And if it aligns, then the city may rise," Luna answered, her voice barely a breath. "Not in conquest, in harmony." The king circled them, slow and mournful. Their song returned, not from the surface now, but from within the ruins, rising from cracks in the stone, a chorus of loss and longing. One king reached out, not to touch, but to point toward a distant arch, beneath which lay a door sealed with glowing runes. "There lies the Heartstone. Guard it. Do not let the unworthy near. The Malfoy blood, it carries old oaths." Draco stiffened. "My family? What do we have to do with this?" "The first oath was broken," the king said. "A Malfoy turned from the pact when the city fell. Now another stands at the crossroads. Will you protect, or repeat the betrayal?" Luna looked at him, her eyes full of quiet trust. The bubble flickered as Draco swallowed hard, the weight of centuries pressing down. "I didn't ask for this," he said, voice low. "No," Luna whispered. "But you're here, and that means something." The king's faded, melting back into stone, their song fading into the pulse of the deep. Above, far above, a ripple passed through the lake, something stirring, and beneath the ruins beneath the arch began to glow. The water around them shimmered with a soft, pulsing light, like breath held beneath glass. Luna hovered in the silence of the deep, her silver diving charm glowing faintly at her throat. Draco beside her, his face pale but resolute behind the enchanted bubble of air. Before them, the ruins of the city rose like whispers from the silt, towers twisted with coral, arches draped in kelp, and streets paved in stone that still shimmered with forgotten runes. And then the singing returned, not from one source, but many, low, wordless harmonies that vibrated through the water, through their bones. They came slowly, figures woven from light and water, translucent and tall, their eyes like distant stars. They moved without swimming, drifting forward, as if carried by memory. Luna reached out, not to touch, but in greeting. One spirit, taller than the rest, with a crown of sea glass and tangled silver hair, drifted closer. "Star, you hear us," Star it said, though no mouth moved. The voice echoed inside their minds, warm and heavy with sorrow. "Star, few have heard in centuries, fewer still have listened." Star Draco swallowed. The sound loud in the bubble. "You are the ones from Atlantis, Star." "Once, Star," the spirit answered. "Star, we were proud. We built with magic and marble, sang spells into the stones, so the city would float above the waves. But power called to darker powers. We reached too far, sought to command the tides, the storms, the very heart of the earth, and in our pride we woke what should have stayed buried. Star." The vision came unbidden, stone cracking beneath the sea, a black rift yawn, open beneath the city's center, tendrils of shadow snaking upward, swallowing light, twisting magic into something ravenous. The city groaned, then fell. "Sar, we could not destroy it," Star the spirit continued. "Sar, only seal it. Our elders chose to sink the city, to drown our home so the darkness below would sleep. The magic of our lives, our songs, our sorrow, it became the seal. We became the ward." Star, Luna's eyes glistened. "You sacrificed yourselves, Star. We linger," Star the spirit corrected. "Star, bound to the deep, singing to keep the balance. But the seal weakens, the songs grow faint, the dark magic stirs again." Star Draco frowned. "Why now? What's changed?" The spirits turned as one, their gaze drifting upward, toward Hogwarts, toward the surface. "Sar, the wards above thin, magic phrase, and when magic falters, the buried things remember how to hunger." Star Luna's fingers brushed Draco's sleeve, the creatures disappearing. They weren't taken, they were pulled, drawn down by the rift, like moths to a flame that shouldn't exist. "Star, the seal demands sacrifice," Star the spirit said. "Star, not of blood, but of harmony. It feeds on imbalance. Your world above, fear, anger, division. It echoes in the deep. It unravels us." Star Draco thought of the whispers in the Slytherin common room, the tension in the halls, the way even his own family's pride had curdled into something brittle and cruel. Had they too fed this? "Star, there is a way," Star Luna whispered. "Star, to strengthen the seal, to lift the city without waking the dark." "Star." The spirit inclined its head. "Star, the prophecy speaks of two hearts, one forged in shadow, one born of light, whose unity can renew the song, not by force, but by truth, by choice." Star Draco's breath caught. "You mean, us, Star. You carry your house's weight," Star the spirit said to him. "Star, but you have chosen another path. For her, for the cousin you shield, for the world you wish to see. And you, Star." It turned to Luna. "Star, who sees what others dismiss, who loves without condition. Together, your belief can be the new foundation." "Star." Luna looked at Draco, her eyes wide, but unafraid. "We'd have to sing with them. Not just voices, but our magic, our intent. A vow in sound." Draco hesitated. "Then if we fail?" "Star. Then the city rises in ruin," Star the spirit said. and the darkness climbs with it, into your halls, your towers, your hearts. Star silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant aching song. Draco reached for Luna's hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was sure. "I've spent so long believing in blood, in name, in walls," he said quietly. "Maybe it's time I believed in something better." Luna smiled, soft as moonlight on water. "Then let's sing." The water was still, thick with silence, the kind that pressed against the eardrums like a held breath. Luna hovered just above the silk-covered steps of the submerged temple, her silver blonde hair drifting like seal silk around her face. The walls around them were carved with spirals and half-eroded glyphs, glowing faintly with a blue-green bioluminescence that pulsed in time with something beneath the stone. A heartbeat slow and ancient. Draco stood beside her, his hand resting on the hilt of the enchanted dagger he'd brought from the Malfoy vaults. His jaw tight. "I can feel it," Luna whispered, her voice muffled by the water, but clearing his mind, carried by the charm they both swallowed. Gillyweed steeped with murtok essence. "The city isn't dead, it's dreaming." Draco frowned. "Dreams don't pull creatures under and vanish them. That's hunger. Or magic gone wrong." She turned to him, her pale eyes wide, unafraid. "Or both. Maybe it's not malice. Maybe it's calling for help." He exhaled, bubbles spiraling upward. "You're impossible." She smiled, and for a moment the cold weight of the lake didn't feel so heavy. They descended deeper into the heart of the ruin, where the pillars arched into a dome, and the floor opened into a circular pool. At its center stood a stone pedestal, cracked with age, holding a disk of black coral, etched with constellations that didn't match the sky above. As Luna swam forward, the water trembled. The carvings on the walls flared, light crawling across the stone like fire and ice. A voice rose, not from one throat, but many, layered, echoing from the deep. It sang in a language Draco didn't know, yet understood in his bones. The words carved themselves into the silence. "Star, when the twin tides align, one cold, one warm. The city shall rise or fall in storm, one bound to reason, one to feeling, their sacrifice the world revealing. Star." The song faded. The light dimmed. Luna reached out, her fingers brushing the edge of the disk. "It's not a curse," she said. "It's a choice." Draco floated closer, his pulse loud in his ears. "A choice to do what?" "To wake Atlantis, but only if two hearts, different, yet willing, surrender themselves to the current. Not die. Surrender. Become part of the magic." He stared at her. "You're saying we have to give ourselves—" "Not die," she repeated gently. "Transform. Become guardians like the ones who came before. That's why the creatures vanished. They weren't taken. They answered the call." He looked at the disk, at the stars shifting beneath its surface. "And if we don't, then the magic festers. The pull grows stronger. Hogwarts will crack at its foundations. The lake will swallow the castle, slowly, like sand in an hourglass." Draco closed his eyes. He thought of his mother's hands, trembling as she lit candles in the dark. Of his father's silence, the weight of pride that had never fit him right. He had spent his life choosing the safe path, the logical one, the one carved by blood and expectation. But here, in this quiet broken place, with Luna's calm gaze on him, logic felt thin, fragile. "Why me?" he asked. "Because you see the world as it is," she said, "and I see it as it could be. That's the balance. Reason and feeling. You anchor, I dream. Together we could be the tide that lifts, not drowns." He looked at her, really looked. Not at the girl others mocked, not at the oddity, but at the girl who spoke to Crumplehorn Snorkax, and trusted the unseen, who had swum into the dark without flinching, not for glory, but because she believed the world deserved saving, even when no one else did. Something cracked inside him, not painfully, but like ice giving way to spring. "If we do this," he said slowly, "we won't be us, not like this." "No," she agreed, "but we'll still be together, in the song, in the current, in the light beneath the waves." He reached for her hand. Her fingers curled around his, small and sure. "Then let's wake the city," he said.
and as their palms pressed against the coral disk, the water sang again, not a lament, but a beginning. The water pressed in around them, cold and heavy, but the enchanted bubblehead charm held firm, a fragile sphere of air shimmering around Luna and Draco as they drifted deeper into the abyss. Below, the lake flow sloped into a chasm lined with moss-covered stone, its edges carved with runes that pulsed faintly blue, like slow underwater breaths. The singing had grown louder, haunting, wordless, a chorus of voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, curling through the currents like threads of silver mist. Luna moved ahead, her pale fingers brushing the ancient glyphs as she floated past. Her eyes, wide and unafraid, reflected the dim glow rising from below. Draco followed close, wand clenched tight, his silver blonde hair drifting like smoke in the current. He didn't believe in Atlantis. He didn't believe in siren songs or lost civilizations. But he believed in the look on his cousin's face when she'd vanished during care of magical creatures, wide-eyed, silent, pulled beneath the surface without a splash. And he believed in Luna, though he wouldn't admit it yet. "This way," she murmured, her voice muffled but clear inside the shared charm. "They're close. I can feel them." "Feel who?" Draco asked, though he already suspected. "The ones who don't belong down here. The ones who are afraid." He frowned. "You mean the missing creatures?" She nodded, already gliding forward, her robes trailing behind her like the wings of a water bird. "They're not lost. They're taken, held." Draco hesitated. "By whom?" Luna lent an answer. She didn't need to. Ahead, the ruins opened into a vast sunken courtyard, columns broken and half-buried, statues of beings neither human nor mer, but something in between, their stone faces worn smooth by time. And in the center of it all, a circular chamber sealed with a dome of shimmering crystal, cracked in places, but still intact. Inside, shapes moved, faint, frozen. Draco's breath caught. A hippogriff, wings half spread, suspended in mid-motion. A jarvey with its mouth open in a silent yelp. A bowtruckle, curled around an invisible branch. Dozens of them, creatures from the forbidden forest, from Hagrid's pen, from the owlery, trapped in stasis, their forms glowing with a soft golden light beneath the crystal dome. "They're alive," Luna whispered, "but not awake." Draco swam closer, pressing a hand to the dome. The surface hummed beneath his palm, vibrating with ancient magic. "This isn't just a cage," he said. "It's a battery." Luna turned to him, her brow furrowing. "They're magic," he explained, voice low. "It's being drained. Look, the runes on the dome, they're feeding off them." She moved to his side, studying the etchings. Not feeding, learning. He gave her a sharp look. "What?" She pointed to a sequence of symbols spiraling around the base. "This says, to remember, we must feel. To rise, we must know. They're not stealing magic. They're trying to understand it. To awaken something." Draco stared at her, then back at the imprisoned creatures. "So they're experiments?" "No," Luna said softly. "They're teachers." A silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant echo of the singing. Draco watched a tiny mooncalf float past, frozen mid-hop, its silver hooves never touching the invisible ground beneath it. "Why take them?" he asked. "Why not ask?" "Because they were forgotten," Luna said, "and forgotten things don't know how to ask nicely." Above them, a shadow moved, long serpentine, trailing ribbons of bioluminescent light. Draco tensed, but Luna only smiled. "They're watching," she said. "The ones who sing, they're afraid too." He swallowed, suddenly aware of how deep they were, how far from the surface, how little he truly knew. "Can we free them?" Luna reached for his hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was sure. "We can try," she said, "but they'll fight us. Not because they're cruel, because they're desperate." Draco looked at her, really looked. At the way her hair curled in the water, at the quiet strength in her gaze, at the way she believed in things no one else could see. He nodded. "Then let's be more desperate." The water pressed in from all sides, cold and heavy, but the bubble charm held steady around them, a fragile sphere of air shimmering like glass beneath the lake's murky surface. Luna floated just ahead of Draco, her silvery blue robes drifting like seaweed in a slow current. Her fingers traced the algae-covered stones of a submerged archway, half collapsed and overgrown with luminous kelp,
that pulsed faintly in rhythm with the distant song. The melody was stronger now, a chorus of voices neither human nor mer, echoing from deep within the ruins. "They're not prisoners," Luna said softly, her voice muffled, but clear inside the bubble. "They're keepers, guardians of the memory." Draco frowned, tightening his grip on his wand. "Then why are the creatures trapped? That Grindylow we saw yesterday. Its eyes were hollow, like something had drained it." Luna turned to him, her wide eyes reflective in the dim light. "Not drained, borrowed. The city remembers what it lost. The life above, the warmth of sunlit forests, the chatter of birds. It pulls them in, not to harm but to remember." He exhaled sharply, a stream of bubbles rising toward the surface far above. "That doesn't make it right." "No," she agreed, "it doesn't." They swam deeper, past shattered columns carved with spirals that seemed to shift when not looked at directly. Statues of merfolk with too many eyes watched them pass, their stone faces serene, sorrowful. Then ahead the ruins opened into a vast courtyard, its center dominated by a massive pulsing crystal embedded in the lake bed. Chains of coral and enchanted iron stretched from it, each link humming with residual magic, binding dozens of creatures, truckles, a drowsing easel, even a small hippogriff, suspended in glowing orbs of water. Draco's breath caught. "They're still alive." Luna nodded, already moving toward the nearest orb. "But not free. The crystal draws their essence to feed the memory, but it's weakening. It needs more than echoes. It's starving." "And if it starves?" Draco asked, stepping closer. "Then the song stops, and the city forgets. But if it takes too much—" She didn't finish. He looked at the hippogriff, its proud head drooping, wings limp. He thought of his cousin, wide-eyed and trembling when the water spirits took her pet Kneasel. He thought of Luna, diving into the lake without fear, armed only with belief and a heart too kind for this world. "We break the chains," he said. Luna smiled, just slightly. "You'll need to trust me." "I don't have a choice," he muttered. But there was no bite in it. She reached into her robes and pulled out a small, opalescent shell. "This was my mother's. She said some songs can only be answered with another song." She placed the shell to her lips and began to hum, a soft, wordless melody that wove through the water like light. And first, nothing. Then the crystal flickered, the chains shivered. One by one the orbs dimmed as the creatures stirred, their eyes opening, their limbs twitching back to life. Draco raised his wand. "Now," he slashed through the nearest chain with a sharp incantation. "Star, finite incantation. Star, finite incantatum star." But the magic resisted, coiling back like a living thing. Luna's song grew stronger, rising in pitch, and the crystal pulsed in time with it. He tried again, pouring his will into the spell, and this time the chain shattered with a sound like breaking ice. The hippogriff tumbled free, catching itself with a weak flap of wings. It looked at Draco, not with fear, but with something like recognition. One by one they broke the chains. With each snap, the song from the depths shifted, not fading but changing, softer, grateful. Shadows began to form at the edges of the courtyard, translucent figures, merfolk and wizards, and beings of sea and storm watching. Not threatening, thanking. When the last chain fell, Luna lowered the shell. The crystal dimmed to a gentle glow. From the silence a single voice emerged. Ancient, resonant. "Star, you've returned what was taken. The debt is acknowledged." "Star," Draco turned to Luna, his chest tight. "Did you know this would happen?" She looked at the specters, her expression peaceful. "I hoped." One of the figures drifted forward, a woman with Luna's eyes, her hair floating like smoke in the water. She reached out, not touching, but the air where her hand passed shimmered with warmth. Luna didn't speak, she only smiled, tears mingling with the lake water. And Draco, for the first time, felt something shift inside him, not fear, not duty, but something quieter, something real. The first tremor came at dawn, a low shiver beneath the stone floors of Hogwarts that made the goblets rattle in the great hall. Luna Lovegood stood at the edge of the Black Lake, her bare feet pressing into the damp earth, her silver-blue eyes fixed on the water's surface. The singing had grown louder over the past 3 nights, melodic, haunting, like voices woven through coral and current. Now, the lake itself seemed to breathe, rising in slow rhythmic swells, as though something vast were stirring beneath. Draco Malfoy approached from the tree line, his cloak pulled tight against the morning chill. He'd been summoned by a note written in loopy script. Star, the city is waking. Bring your wand and your courage. Star. He'd almost torn it up, but the thought of his younger cousin, little Alice, who'd vanished near the lake 2 days prior, had forced his hand. You're late, Luna said without turning.
I wasn't aware we had a scheduled appointment with the apocalypse, he replied, voice sharp with nerves he wouldn't admit. She smiled faintly. It's not an apocalypse, it's an awakening. Can't you feel it? The pulse in the water? The stones remember. He stepped closer, peering into the lake. The surface shimmered with an unnatural iridescence, shifting between deep green and violet. Beneath the waves, shadows moved, long sinuous shapes gliding between columns of what looked like ancient architecture, half buried in silt and kelp. That wasn't there last week, he said, pointing. No, Luna agreed. It's rising. Atlantis doesn't want to be forgotten. A ripple passed through the water. Then another, stronger. The ground trembled again, this time sending a crack snaking across the lakeshore. Draco staggered, catching himself against a birch. We should go back, he said. Get the professors, Dumbledore. And tell them what? Luna turned to face him, her gaze steady. That the myth is real? That a city older than magic sleeps beneath our feet, and it's calling Alice by name in her dreams? They'd lock us in the hospital wing before we reached the staircase. He frowned. How do you know about her dreams? Because I've been listening, she said softly. And so has the lake. A sudden vibration hummed through the air, resonant and deep, like the tolling of a bell from the ocean floor. The water parted in a wide circle, revealing a spiraling staircase of black stone, etched with glowing runes that pulsed in time with the rhythm. Luna stepped forward, her toes at the water's edge. You can't be serious, Draco said. I have to go down. You'll drown. She looked at him, her face calm. Not if the city welcomes me. He grabbed her wrist. You don't know that. But I believe it, she whispered. And sometimes, Draco, belief is the strongest kind of magic. The runes flared brighter. The staircase descended into darkness, but the water did not rush in to fill the gap. It held back, as if held at bay by an unseen force. Then from below a voice, clear, childlike, called out. Luna? Draco? Elise? Draco breathed. Luna turned to him. She's alive, and she's waiting. His grip tightened on her arm, not to stop her, but to steady himself. The air thrummed with energy, the kind that made his teeth ache and his wand vibrate in his pocket. If we go down there, he said slowly, there's no promise we'll come back. No, Luna agreed. But if we don't, Hogwarts might not survive the rising. He looked into her eyes, wide, unafraid, filled with a quiet certainty that unsettled him more than any curse ever had. After a long pause, he released her wrist and drew his wand. Then we go together. The ground beneath Hogwarts trembled like a beast stirring in its sleep. Windows rattled in their frames, goblets slipped from trembling hands in the great hall, and portraits swayed on the walls, their occupants shouting warnings in shrill, indignant voices. First it was a low rumble, felt more than heard, vibrating up through the soles of shoes and into the bones. Then came the sound, a deep, resonant hum, as if the earth itself were singing in a language forgotten by time. Students poured into the corridors, robes askew, wands drawn, eyes wide with confusion and fear. A first-year Hufflepuff sobbed into her sleeve as the staircase beneath her shifted unexpectedly, groaning like old timber in a storm. It's the lake, someone shouted. Look at the lake. From the highest towers the Black Lake churned violently, its surface boiling, despite the absence of wind. Great plumes of water erupted skyward, falling back in sheets that shimmered with an eerie silver-blue light. Mist curled over the shore, thick and unnatural, pulsing in time with the hum that now filled the air. The squid had surfaced, tentacles flailing, not in curiosity, but in distress, before vanishing beneath the froth. In the midst of the chaos, Draco Malfoy stood at the edge of the cliff, overlooking the lake, his pale face taut, fingers clenched around his wand. His breath came short. He had felt it the moment the magic surged, a cold, electric pull deep in his chest,
as if something beneath the water were calling to him. He didn't understand it, but he knew, star knew star, that Luna was down there. She's still under, he muttered, more to himself than to Professor Sinista, who stood beside him, her usually calm face etched with alarm. We can't send anyone in, the professor said, voice tight. The wards are fluctuating. The lake's magic is unstable. It's rejecting intrusion. Draco turned sharply. Then break them.
You don't understand what's happening, she replied. The lake isn't just water anymore. It's a conduit. Something beneath it is waking. The legends, the ones the students laugh at, they might be true. He said nothing, jaw clenched. He thought of Luna's quiet certainty, her strange silver eyes alight with belief as she spoke of coral towers, and merfolk with voices like wind chimes. He had mocked her at first, but then he saw the way the water stilled when she sang back. He saw the way the Grindylows bowed their heads as she passed, and he had let her go down there. A scream pierced the air, not of fear, but of wonder. At the lake's edge, a student pointed. The water had parted, not cracked, not splashed, star-parted star, like a curtain drawn aside by unseen hands. Through the gap, a structure emerged, slick with algae and time, its arches carved with symbols no one could read. Stone columns rose like the ribs of some ancient leviathan, glowing faintly from within. From its heart, the singing returned, not faint this time, but clear, haunting, layered in harmonies that made the air shimmer. Draco's breath caught. It was Luna's voice, fragile, but defiant, rising above the chorus. And beneath it, something else, a pulse, slow and deep, like the heartbeat of the world. Then Hogwarts shuddered again, harder this time. A crack split the courtyard. The astronomy tower groaned, its tip tilting slightly, like a finger pointing toward the sky in warning. Draco stepped forward, toward the edge, toward the impossible city rising from the depths. She's not coming back alone, he said, and he raised his wand, not in defense, but in answer. The water pressed in around them, thick and cold, muffling the world above. Draco's breath came in careful bursts through the enchanted reed that allowed them to breathe beneath the lake's surface, each exhale sending a trail of silver bubbles spiraling toward the dim light far above. The ruins loomed ahead, stone arches draped in kelp, columns cracked and leaning like the ribs of some ancient beast, half swallowed by time and silt. The psalm was louder now, not in his ears but in his bones, a low haunting hum that tugged at something deep in his chest. Luna swam ahead, her pale hands brushing over carved symbols on a crumbling wall, her hair fanned like moonlight caught in a current, and her eyes, wide, unafraid, reflected the faint glow of enchanted moss clinging to the stones. She turned to him, smiling faintly. "They're here, Draco, the ones who remember." He didn't answer. His fingers curled into fists. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to flee this madness before it dragged him under, literally and otherwise. His father's voice slithered through his mind. "Star, Malfoys don't follow dreamers into the dark. We don't risk everything for fairy tales. Star." But then he looked at her, at the quiet certainty in her face, the way she touched the ruins like they were sacred, like she already knew their names. He thought of his cousin, wide-eyed and trembling in the Slytherin dormitory, whispering about voices in the water, about hands that reached up from the lake at midnight. No one had believed her, no one except Luna. "They took her," Draco said, the words thick in his throat. "They took Arya, and now you want to walk right into their city, and ask them nicely to give her back." Luna tilted her head, considering. "They didn't take her, they called her. There's a difference." "That's mad, or true," she replied softly. "You don't have to come further. I won't think less of you if you go back." He stiffened. "I'm not leaving. You sound afraid." "I'm not afraid," he snapped, and then stopped. The truth hung in the water between them, heavier than the lake above. Star was star-afraid. Not of the creatures, not even of drowning. He was afraid of failing again, of standing helpless while someone else paid the price, of being the boy who followed orders, who stood silent while things went wrong. Luna reached for his hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was steady. You don't have to be brave all at once, just brave enough for the next step. He looked down at their joined hands, at the way his pale skin contrasted with her sun-starved glow. He thought of the prophecy they'd found scrawled in the ruins beneath the astronomy tower. Star. When the song returns and the lost rise, the heir of shadow must choose. Drown the light or let the city breathe again. Star, he didn't know what it meant. Didn't know if he was the heir it spoke of. But he knew with sudden clarity that if he turned back now, he'd carry the weight of it forever. A shadow moved beyond the archway, long-limbed, graceful, a figure emerging from the ruins with webbed fingers trailing through the current. Gills flared at its neck, and its eyes, large, luminous, fixed on Luna. It sang a single note that vibrated through the water like a plucked harp string. Luna didn't flinch. "We're not here to fight," she said, her voice calm, clear. "We're here to understand." Draco stepped forward, shoulder to shoulder with her. His heart hammered, but his voice didn't waver. "And we're not leaving without the girl." The creature tilted its head, studying them. Then slowly it raised a hand, not in threat, but in invitation. Draco glanced at Luna. She smiled. He took a breath, gripped her hand tighter, and stepped forward into the dark. The water was no longer cold. It pressed against their skin like liquid silk, humming with a resonance that seeped into bone and breath. Before them, rising from the Shilton shadow, stood the heart of Atlantis, a spiraling altar carved from luminous coral, its surface etched with runes that pulsed like slow, steady heartbeats. Moonlight fractured through the lake's surface, 100 feet above, filtered down in trembling shafts, catching in the shifting currents like silver threads. Luna floated forward, her silver blonde hair fanning around her like a halo, her eyes wide and unafraid. "It's beautiful," she whispered, and the water carried her voice in echoing ripples. Draco hovered behind her, his jaw tight, his fingers brushing the hilt of the enchanted dagger he'd brought. More for comfort than necessity. He'd expected traps, guardians, some monstrous remnant of ancient magic. But the silence was deeper than danger. It was reverence. The altar stood at the center of a vast sunken plaza, its columns draped in kelp and glowing anemones. Strange fish, translucent and jeweled, darted through the ruins like living stars. And beneath it all, the singing, so faint now it was almost memory, wove through the water, wordless and sorrowful. Luna reached out, her fingertips hovering just above the central rune. "They're not gone," she said. "They're waiting." "For what?" Draco asked, his voice rough. He didn't believe in Atlantis. He didn't believe in prophecies. But he believed in the way Luna's hands glowed faintly where they hovered over the stone. He believed in the way the water trembled when she spoke. "For someone to choose," she said. "The city can rise, or it can rest, but it cannot stay hidden forever. The magic is unraveling. That's why creatures have vanished. The veil between worlds is thinning." He stepped closer, his boots stirring the silt. "And if it rises, the lake will drain, Hogwarts will fall, the land will crack. But Atlantis, it will breathe again. Its people, spirits, memories, whatever remains, will return to the sun. And if it stays, the magic will consume itself. The lake will become a wound in a world. And one day, something worse will rise in its place." Draco exhaled, watching the bubbles spiral upward. "So we save the past or protect the present, knowing between." Luna turned to him, her eyes soft. "You don't have to decide. This is my choice. I brought you here to keep you safe, to keep Scorpius safe." He almost laughed. "You brought me here because you knew I wouldn't let you come alone. And you were right." She smiled then, small and sad. "I've always known you were braver than you let on, Draco Malfoy." He looked away, heat rising in his chest, despite the water. "Don't say things like that. Not now." But she reached for his hand, and this time he let her take it. Her skin was cool, but the pressure of her fingers was warm, with intent. "The prophecy says the choice must be made by two, one who believes and one who doubts, together." He frowned. "You never mentioned that part, because I wasn't sure you'd stay if I did." He looked at her, really looked. At the quiet strength in her gaze, the way she carried wonder like armor. He thought of Scorpius, asleep in the slithering dorms, safe because of her. He thought of his father's cold pride, his mother's silence, the weight of a name that meant nothing down here. "I spent my life choosing the safe path," he said. "The smart one. The one that keeps me alive. And now?" He closed his eyes. The psalm returned, clearer, closer, voices like tides, like memories, like something ancient calling home. "Now," he said, squeezing her hand,
I think I'd rather believe in something." Together they placed their hands upon the altar. The runes blazed. The lake trembled, and deep beneath the earth, Atlantis began to dream of dawn. The water pressed in around them, cold and heavy, muffling the world above. Draco Malfoy kicked forward, his silver blonde hair drifting in the current like spun mercury. Beside him, Luna Lovegood glided with an eerie grace, her wide eyes reflecting the faint bioluminescent glow of the coral-covered ruins that rose from the silt below. The singing had grown louder, the deeper they swam, ethereal, wordless, a chorus that seemed to come from the stones themselves. It curled through the water like smoke, tugging at something deep in Draco's chest, something he didn't want to name. Luna turned to him, her lips parting. A stream of silver bubbles escaped, but no sound reached his ears. She pointed ahead, where a massive archway of obsidian stone stood half-buried beneath centuries of silt and kelp. Carvings spiraled along its surface, serpentine figures, with eyes of moonstone, their bodies coiled around glyphs that pulsed faintly with blue light. Draco shook his head, pressing a hand to his chest. The protective charm they'd cast was fraying. His lungs burned with the strain of the underwater enchantment, and the cold was seeping into his bones. He couldn't go farther alone. Luna reached for him, her fingers brushing his wrist. Her touch was surprisingly warm. "We have to link," she said, her voice echoing in his mind, as if spoken through watering dream. "Our magic has to flow together, where the wards will tear us apart." He hesitated. "You know what happens when two wizards bind their magic mid-spell? If there's distrust, if the intent fractures. I trust you, Draco," she said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "And I think in your way you trust me too." He looked into her eyes, pale blue, unflinching, filled with a quiet certainty that unsettled him more than any curse. He'd spent years building walls, shielding himself behind pride and poison, but Luna didn't seem to see them. Or perhaps she did, and simply chose to walk around them. "Fine," he murmured, gripping her hand. "But if this goes wrong, I'm blaming you." She smiled, just slightly. "I'd expect nothing less." They faced the archway. Draco closed his eyes and focused, drawing his magic up from the core of his being. A cool, controlled flame. Luna's presence beside him was different. A soft, silver current, like moonlight on water. He exhaled, then began the incantation, his voice resonating through the water. "Lumen into duo, vinculum sine catena." Luna joined him, her voice weaving into his like a second thread in the tapestry. "Cor in aqua, mens in luz." Their magic met in the space between them. Not clashing, but merging. A pulse of light erupted from their joined hands, spiraling outward in ribbons of silver and pale gold. The water shimmered, alive with energy. Draco gasped as he felt it. Not just her magic, a star her star. A sense of wonder, untainted by fear. The sorrow, deep and quiet, for all things lost. And beneath it, a resilience that refused to break. Images flickered behind his eyes, a city of crystal towers sinking beneath the waves, figures with gills and silver hair reaching out as the sky vanished. A prophecy whispered in a language older than magic. "Star, the bond of two unlike souls shall wake the drowned crown, or drown the halls of learning in its wake. Star." He tightened his grip on Luna's hand. "I see it too," he whispered into her mind. She nodded. "It's not just about power. It's about choice and trust." The archway groaned, cracks of light split the obsidian, and the kelp tore away as the ancient mechanism responded. The path ahead opened into a vast chamber, where a single column of light pierced the darkness from far above, illuminating a pedestal at the center. Upon it, a crown of coral and starlight. Draco's breath caught. "That's it. The crown of Thalassar." Luna didn't move toward it. Instead, she looked at him. "We leave it, or we take it, together." He met her gaze, and for the first time in his life, Draco Malfoy didn't feel alone beneath the weight of a choice. He squeezed her hand once gently. "Together," he said. The surface of the Black Lake trembled like a sheet of glass struck by invisible fingers. Luna stood at the edge, barefoot in the damp grass, her silver hair lifting in a wind that touched no one else. Her eyes were closed, lips parted as if tasting the air. Draco watched her from a few paces behind, wand clenched in his hand, breathe shallow. The singing had changed. It was no longer distant, no longer a whisper beneath the waves. It pulsed now, rising from the depths in harmonies that made his bones hum. "It's waking," Luna murmured, not opening her eyes. "The city remembers its name." A low groan shuddered through the lake bed, and the water began to swirl, forming a spiral that widened toward the center. Bubbles the size of cauldrons broke the surface, releasing tendrils of iridescent mist. Draco took a step back. "This is madness. We should alert Dumbledore. Someone." Luna turned to him then, her gaze luminous in the moonlight. "They wouldn't understand. They'd try to stop it." "But it doesn't want to harm anyone, Draco. It only wants to breathe again." He wanted to argue, to insist on reason, but the lake was rising. Not with waves, but with the water itself lifting, as if something immense beneath was pushing it aside. A column of pale blue light burst from the center of the lake, shooting into the sky like a beacon. It pulsed once, twice, and then the water began to recede from the edges, rushing backward as though repelled by an unseen hand. And then they saw it, stone. Carved arches, spiraling towers, domes encrusted with coral, and centuries of silence. Atlantis rose slowly, water cascading from its ancient spires like liquid silk. Bioluminescent veins threaded through the ruins, glowing with an inner fire, sapphire, emerald, amethyst, casting shifting colors across the clouds. The air filled with the scent of salt and ozone, and something older, like the breath of a library sealed for 1,000 years. Draco's breath cawed. "It's beautiful." Luna smiled, tears glistening on her cheeks. "They're singing thank you." He looked at her, really looked. The light danced in her eyes, and for the first time he didn't see the odd girl the others mocked. He saw someone who had always known truths he'd never even imagined. Someone who spoke to the world, not with fear, but with kindness. A rumble echoed across the grounds. The castle trembled. Owls scattered from the towers. From within the rising city, a deeper voice joined the chorus, a single, resonant tone that vibrated through the earth. Luna's smile faltered. "It's not finished," the prophecy said. "Star, when the city breathes, the spire must choose. Star." Draco frowned. "What does that mean?" Before she could answer, the light from the tower at the city's heart flared, brighter, hotter, then split into two beams. One shot upward, piercing the sky. The other lanced toward Hogwarts, striking the astronomy tower, with a sound like shattering crystal. The ground heaved. Draco lunged, grabbing Luna's arm, and pulling her down as stones cracked along the lake's edge. Around them the earth split in delicate fractures, glowing with the same blue fire that now raced through the roots of the castle. "They're connected," Luna whispered. "The magic here, it's part of the same bloodline. The founders, they used Atlantean magic to bind the school to the earth. So if Atlantis rises," Draco said slowly, "Hogwarts could collapse, or worse." He pulled beneath. They stared at each other, the weight of it settling between them. The city was free, but freedom had a price. Luna reached for his hand, her fingers cool and steady. "We have to go back down. There's a chamber beneath the central tower, the heart of the song. If we can reach it, maybe we can balance the magic. Not let it choose. Make it share." Draco looked at their joined hands, then at the impossible city breathing beneath the stars. He exhaled, and for once didn't argue. "Then, let's go," he said. Before dawn breaks and the world decides we're mad. Rain lashed against the towers of Hogwarts, turning the Black Lake into a churning expanse of ink and silver. Thunder rolled not from the sky, but from beneath the water's surface, a deep, guttural pulse that vibrated through the soles of Luna Lovegood's boots. She stood at the edge, her pale hands pressed to the cold stone of the lakeside wall, her eyes closed as if listening to a psalm only she could hear. Draco Malfoy approached cautiously, his cloak pulled tight against the wind. "You're going to catch your death out here, Lovegood." She didn't turn. "They're afraid," she said softly. "The ones below. The magic is fraying." He frowned, scanning the lake. "You still believe they're Atlanteans?" "I don't believe it," she corrected, opening her wide silvery eyes. "I start. The psalm changes when the seal weakens. It's not a lullaby anymore. It's a warning." A low groan echoed across the water, like stone grinding on stone. The surface bulged, then split with a hiss of steam. Draco drew his wand. "That doesn't sound like a warning," Sounds like something's coming up. Luna stepped forward, holding out her hand. No, not up. Star out. Star. They're not trying to rise. They're trying to escape what's behind them. Behind? Luna? What in Merlin's name are you? A tendril of black mist surged from the lake, coiling like a serpent, before slamming into the air, with a crack that split the rain. It wasn't water. It wasn't alive. Not in any way Draco recognized. It pulsed with a sickly violet light, and where it touched the grass, the earth withered and cracked. Protego! Draco shouted, throwing up a shield, just as a second tendril lashed out. The spell buckled, the magic straining, under the weight of something ancient and hungry. They're not breaking the seal, Luna whispered, her voice trembling, not with fear but sorrow. They're being pushed. The lake heaved, shapes moved beneath, massive, angular, like the bones of a drowned city, shifting in their sleep. And then from the depths came the singing. Not the haunting melody Luna had described before, but a chorus of voices twisted into dissonance, crying out in a language older than time. Draco's breath caught. That's not possible. Nothing is impossible, Luna murmured, raising her own wand. Only forgotten. The black tendrils multiplied, writhing upward, like roots seeking light. One latched onto the stone wall, and began to crawl, dissolving the ancient masonry as it advanced. Draco shot a spell, Star Defindo Star, but the tendril absorbed the magic like smoke, growing thicker. We need more than spells, he said, backing away. Luna stepped past him, her wand glowing with a soft silver light. Then we give them something they remember. She began to sing. It was a single pure note at first, rising above the storm. Then another, harmonizing with the chaos below. The dissonance in the lake faltered. The tendrils hesitated. Draco stared at her. You're singing star back star to them? They're not attacking, she said between notes. They're scared. They've been buried too long. They don't know they're safe. Another surge of dark mist erupted. But this time, Luna didn't flinch. She held her note, steady and clear, and Draco felt something shift in the air. A warmth, a memory, like sunlight on water. He didn't understand it, but he believed her. Drawing a breath, he raised his wand not to attack, but to join. He didn't know the song. He didn't know the words, but he remembered his mother's lullabies, the quiet hums she'd sing when the Dark Lord's shadow loomed too close. He sang that now, low, uncertain at first, then stronger. The two voices wove together, hers ethereal, his grounded in reluctant courage. The black tendrils slowed. The violet light dimmed. Beneath the lake, the singing softened, the dissonance giving way to something quieter, something ancient and weary. And then silence. The storm broke. Rain still fell gentle now. The lake stilled, its surface smooth as glass. Luna lowered her wand, her chest rising and falling. They're resting again. Draco exhaled, his voice rough. You knew that would work? She turned to him, eyes glistening, not with tears, but with something deeper. I knew it was worth trying. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time didn't see the odd girl, the dreamer, the outcast. He saw the one who heard what no one else could, and in that moment, the weight between them shifted, not like stone, but like water, finding its way home. The water pressed in from all sides, cold and ancient, carrying whispers that slithered through the silence like silver eels. Luna's hair floated around her like moonlight, caught in a current, her eyes wide and unblinking as she stared into the crumbling archway ahead. Beyond it, the ruins of Atlantis stretched into the gloom, towers of coral-encrusted stone, stairways spiraling into nothing, domes cracked open like eggs. The prophecy glowed faintly in her palm, etched into a shard of aquamarine crystal, pulsing with a rhythm that matched the deep subsonic hum rising from the seabed. Draco hovered beside her, his breath regulated by the enchanted gillyweed they'd chewed. He watched Luna's face, the way her lips moved silently, repeating the prophecy's final lines. He didn't need to hear them aloud to know what was coming. The magic here was too old, too heavy. It demanded balance. They didn't sink, Luna murmured, her voice distorted by the water, but clear in his mind. They chose to go under, to sleep, to wait until the world remembered how to listen. Draco swallowed the motion on underwater,
And now someone's listening. She turned to him, her gaze soft but unyielding.
The city can rise, Draco, but not without a price. One soul must stay. One heart must choose to remain, bound to the magic, so the others can go free. He stared at her. No, it's not sacrifice if it's given freely, she said, almost gently. It has to be chosen.
That's insane. There has to be another way. A spell, a loophole, something. His voice cracked with frustration. You don't just throw yourself into ancient curses because they sound poetic.
Luna smiled then, a quiet, luminous thing that made the dark water seem less suffocating.
You say that like I haven't been preparing for this my whole life. He reached for her arm, fingers brushing her sleeve. You don't know that. You don't know it has to be you. I've heard their songs since I was small, she said.
In my dreams, in the rustle of the wind through the trees.
They've been calling.
Maybe not by name, but they've been waiting for someone who believes in lost things, someone who isn't afraid of the dark.
Draco's chest tightened. He thought of her standing alone on the astronomy tower at dawn, wrapped in that ridiculous radish hat, gazing at the stars like they spoke to her. He thought of her voice, steady and calm, when everyone else had laughed. He thought of the way she'd looked at him in the library that first day, not with pity or scorn, but with curiosity, like he, too, was something rare and worth saving. You're not lost, he said, the words clumsy in the water, too raw to sound true. You're not some relic to be buried. I'm not being buried, she whispered. I'm becoming part of something older than fear, older than silence. Behind them, the ruins began to tremble. Cracks split the seabed, glowing with pale blue light. The city was waking, and it was hungry. Draco looked at the crystal in her hand, then at her face, then past her, to the shadowy shapes beginning to stir in the depths, figures wrapped in kelp and memory, rising from their long slumber. He made his choice. Before Luna could react, he wrenched the crystal from her grasp. Pain lanced through his palm as the magic seared his skin, but he held on. He met her eyes one last time. You once told me the crumple-horned snorkak isn't extinct, he said, voice tight. Just unseen. She shook her head, reaching for him. Draco. And you believed, he continued, softer now, even when no one else did. So believe this. I'm not gone, I'm just under. Then he turned and stepped through the archway, into the heart of the ruins. The light swallowed him whole. Luna screamed. No sound in the water, only the shudder of her body, the silent tear that drifted from her eye like a lost star. Above, through layers of dark water, the surface of the Black Lake rippled once, then stilled. And far below, in the sunken city, a new song began to rise, not of sorrow, but of balance, of a boy who stayed so others could return, of a girl who carried his voice in her heart, long after he was gone. The water pressed in from all sides, cold and silent, broken only by the echo of voices that seemed to rise not from the lake, but from the bones of the earth itself. Luna floated just ahead of Draco, her silver blonde hair drifting like sea silk around her face, her eyes closed as if listening to a melody only she could hear. The ruins of Atlantis loomed around them, columns of coral-encrusted stone spiraling upward into the dark, their carvings pulsing with a faint blue light that flickered like dying stars. Draco gripped his wand tighter, the tip glowing dimly, casting long shadows across the ancient mosaics of drowned gods and forgotten constellations. They're coming, Luna whispered, her voice barely a ripple in the water. The last of the kings. Above them, the lake's surface trembled, moonlight fractured by the ripples of an unseen storm, sliced through the depths in trembling beams. Then, one by one, figures emerged from the ruins, translucent, tall, crowned with coral-lid kelp, their eyes hollow, yet alive with sorrow. 7 spectral kings, their robes made of woven tides, began to circle the ruins, their mouths opening in unison. The song began. It was not sound as Draco had ever known it. It was memory, it was grief, it was the slow turning of continents. The notes wrapped around his ribs, tightened his throat, pulled tears from behind his eyes. He saw flashes, cities rising from the sea, towers climbing toward stars, laughter on marble balconies beneath twin moons. Then fire, then collapse, then silence beneath the waves. The magic in the lake shivered, the ruins groaned. The water itself seemed to bow. Luna reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. Her fingers were cold, but her touch sent warmth through him, a fragile tether to the present.
She opened her eyes, and in them, he saw the same visions, not as nightmares, but as remembrance. Her lips moved, not in song, but in silent acknowledgement. She wasn't afraid. The song shifted. The grief deepened, then softened, like a wound finally closing. The kings lifted their hands, palms facing the sky, and the blue light from the carvings flared, climbing the columns, spiraling into a dome above the ruins. At its center, the prophecy stone, etched with runes that pulsed like a heartbeat, rose slowly from the silt. By sacrifice, unasked, by voice of the lost, the seal is made, star, star. No hand of man shall wake the deep, nor power stolen from the drowned. Star lest, let's Highland hold what waters keep, until the stars forget their names. Star Luna, exhaled, and Draco felt the weight of centuries settle into the lake bed. They're sealing the magic, she said softly, not destroying it, just returning it to sleep. Draco watched as the kings bowed their heads. One by one, they dissolved into light, streaming into the stone, which then sank slowly back into the mud. The blue glow faded. The columns dimmed. The lake grew still. Above them, the storm broke. Rain pattered the surface, soft as breath. "We should go," he said, voice rough. Luna nodded, but before she turned, she looked at him, really looked, and smiled. "Thank you," she said, "for staying, for listening." He didn't answer with words. Instead, he brushed a strand of wet hair from her cheek, his fingers lingering for a heartbeat too long. Then they kicked upward, breaking the surface together. Beneath a sky washed clean, Hogwarts stood on the shore, quiet, ancient, safe. And behind them, the lake lay calm, holding its secrets once more. The first light of dawn filtered through the surface of the Black Lake, fractured and trembling, casting liquid gold across the silent towers of the submerged city. The song had ceased, not with a final note, but like a breath gently released, lingering in the air as if the water itself refused to forget. Luna stood at the edge of the ancient stone plaza, her bare feet pressing into the silt-covered marble, her silver-blue robes damp and shimmering with residual magic. She tilted her head, listening to the quiet, not emptiness, but a kind of hush, like the pause between heartbeats. Draco sat on a broken column nearby, his dark cloak wrapped tightly around him, his face pale but calm. His fingers, still slightly trembling, traced the faint scar along his forearm, not the dark mark, but a new mark, a spiral of iridescent blue, etched there by the Atlantean wardstone. It pulsed once, softly in time with Luna's breathing. "They're safe now," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "The ones below, they're not gone, just waiting." Draco looked up. "Waiting for what?" "For balance," she answered, turning to him. Her eyes were wide, luminous, reflecting the pale light like shallow pools. "The city wasn't meant to rise. Not yet. Not ever, if the world above isn't ready. But it wasn't meant to be forgotten either. It's a bridge now, between sea and sky, past and present, magic and myth." He exhaled, long and slow. "And we're the ones who held it open. We were the keys," she corrected gently. "You more than you know," he frowned. "Me. I didn't even believe in this place until last week." "No," she said, stepping closer. "But you believed in protecting someone. That's what mattered. The wardstone doesn't respond to power. It responds to intent. You didn't come for glory. You came for family. That's rare." Draco looked away, but not before she saw the flicker of something vulnerable cross his face. "I didn't do it alone." "No," she agreed. "That's why it worked." A ripple passed beneath the surface, not of water, but of magic. A slow, deep pulse that rose from the heart of the ruins and faded into the lake's embrace. The stones beneath their feet glowed faintly, then dimmed, settling into dormancy. The city had withdrawn, not vanished, but folded itself into a liminal space, guarded by enchantments older than Hogwarts itself. Luna knelt and pressed her palm to the stone. "They'll dream, and when the world remembers how to listen, they'll sing again." Draco stood, brushing dust from his trousers. "And what happens now?" She smiled. "Now, we go back. We tell no one. Not really. Not the whole truth. Some things are better kept soft, like secrets wrapped in mist. And if someone tries to find it again, then they'll need more than a spell, she said. They'll need a reason worth trusting. He looked at her, truly looked, at the quiet certainty in her stance, the way her hair caught the light like spun moonlight, the calm in her eyes that had never wavered, not even when the kraken stirred in the deep. He reached out, hesitated, then gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. You're impossible, you know that. She tilted her head, smiling. So I've been told. And kind, he added, softer. Too kind, maybe. Kindness isn't weakness, Draco. No, he admitted. I'm starting to see that. The surface above shimmered, and far off, the silhouette of a giant squid drifted past like a silent guardian. Above them, the first birds of morning called across the grounds of Hogwarts, their songs sharp and clear against the cooling air. Luna reached for his hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was sure. Come on, she said. The sun's up, the world's still turning. And I think I'd like a cup of tea. He let her pull him forward, stepping carefully over the ancient stones, back toward the enchanted rope ladder that would take them home. Neither looked back. They didn't need to. The city was no longer lost. It was remembered, and that was enough. The first rays of dawn filtered through the great hall's enchanted ceiling, painting streaks of rose and gold across the stone arches. But the students beneath them were already abuzz, not with the promise of a new day, but with whispers of the impossible. The Black Lake had calmed, its surface now smooth as obsidian, yet the memory of shimmering lights beneath the water and the haunting, wordless song still clung to the air like mist. Breakfast trays clinked as students craned their necks toward the lake-facing windows, eyes wide, voices hushed and reverent. Luna Lovegood sat quietly at the Ravenclaw table, her butterbeer cork necklace catching the light with each tilt of her head. She stirred her porridge in slow circles, not eating, merely watching the steam curl upward, like forgotten spirits. A few students approached her, some curious, others wary. Asking questions, she answered with her usual dreamy composure. The Atlanteans are at Keys now, she said to a second-year Hufflepuff. They sang their sorrow into the stone, and the lake listened. That's why it's quiet again. Draco Malfoy entered the hall with measured steps, his usual air of superiority softened by the faint shadows beneath his eyes. He hadn't slept, not truly. Images of descending through kelp forests, licked by bioluminescent runes, of crumbling spires carved with forgotten constellations, of Luna's hands in his as they swam through the silence of a sunken world. It all played behind his eyelids like a half-remembered dream. He caught sight of her and hesitated, then turned toward the Slytherin table, where Pansy Parkinson immediately lodged into a barrage of questions. "Is it true you went into the lake with Loony Lovegood?" she asked, wrinkling her nose. "People are saying you saw mere ghosts or sea dragons, or—" "We went to investigate," Draco interrupted, voice low. "There were ruins and voices, that's all. But why Star, her star?" Tracy Davis asked, leaning in. "And why risk yourself?" "That's not like you." Draco didn't answer. He glanced across the hall. Luna had lifted her gaze, meeting his with that quiet, knowing look, the one that saw too much, too clearly. He looked away, picking at the edge of his toast. Later, by the lake's shore, he found her again. She stood barefoot in the damp grass, her toes curling into the earth, staring at the water as if listening for echoes. He stopped a few paces behind her. "You're not going back in, are you?" he asked. She turned, smiling faintly. "Not today. The song has ended. They've moved on." "Moved on where?" "Somewhere deeper," she said. "Somewhere older. The world has layers. Draco. Most people only walk on the top." He frowned. "You make it sound like magic is just waiting to be found." "It is," she said. "If you're willing to look, even in the dark." A silence settled between them, not awkward, but full, like the space after a note has faded, but still lingers in the bones. He remembered how she'd held his hand in the crushing dark below, how her voice had cut through the pressure with a single steady word, "Star, breathe, star." How she'd looked at him, not with pity, but with trust. "I never thanked you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not treating me like I was broken down there. For believing I could help." She tilted her head, as if considering a bird, only she could see. "You're more than people think, Draco, even more than you think. He almost smiled. Almost. Above them the sky shifted. Clouds parted. A single white feather drifted down, catching in Luna's hair. She didn't brush it away. The lake breeze curled through the open tower window, carrying with it the faint, salty whisper of the Black Lake, and the distant cry of a lone hippogriff, circling the forbidden forest. Inside the small cluttered room, quills lay abandoned across parchment, ink smudged like storm clouds at the edges of half-written thoughts. Luna Lovegood sat cross-legged on a worn rug, her fingers tracing the delicate silver chain of a pendant she'd found in the ruins. A spiral seashell encasing a drop of glowing water that pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. She didn't look up when the door creaked open, but a small smile touched her lips. Draco paused in the doorway, his usual composure softened by something quieter, something that didn't belong in the sharp angles of his family name. He leaned against the frame, arms crossed, watching her. The candlelight caught the pale gold of his hair and the shadows beneath his eyes, remnants of nights spent deciphering Atlantean glyphs and standing guard when the lake stirred with things best left undisturbed. "You are still awake," he said, voice low as if speaking too loudly might break the stillness between them. "I was waiting," she replied, finally lifting her gaze. Her eyes were wide and clear like moonlight on water. "The shell hums when you're near. Did you know that?" He stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a quiet click. "It's probably just magic reacting to bloodline signatures. My ancestors were entangled with the old sea wards. Or it likes you," she said simply, holding it out toward him. "Here, listen." He hesitated, then knelt beside her, folding his long frame with careful grace. When his fingers brushed hers as he took the pendant, neither of them pulled away. The shell warmed between his palms, and then, faint but unmistakable, a melody rose from within. Not the haunting echoing chorus from the depths, but something softer. A lullaby, wordless and sweet, like a memory of a home no one remembered. Draco exhaled, unguarded. "I've never heard that before." Luna tilted her head. "It's singing your name, or a version of it, in the old tongue. It sounds like Storm-born Protector." He looked at her, startled. "You understand it?" "I don't need to understand every word to feel what it means." She reached out, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. A gesture so tender, it made his breath catch. "You've been afraid, haven't you? Not just for your cousin, but for all of it. For what we might wake. For what we've already changed." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned the pendant over in his hands, watching the light dance in its core. "I spent so long believing in purity of blood, in strength through separation, and now I stood beneath a dead city that welcomed me because of who my ancestors were, not despite it, and I fought beside someone who sees beauty in nargles and lost souls, and somehow that's the truest magic I've ever known." Luna's smile was small, but it lit her entire face. He met her eyes, his voice barely above a whisper. "I used to think compassion was weakness. Now I think it might be the only thing that keeps the dark from swallowing us whole." Outside, the wind sighed through the ivy. Somewhere deep below, the lake stirred, and the singing rose again, not a warning this time, but a question. And in that quiet room, with the glow of ancient water between them and the weight of unspoken feelings hanging in the air, Draco leaned forward, slowly, giving her time to pull away, and pressed his lips to her forehead. She didn't move. Instead, she leaned into him, her hand resting gently over his heart. They stayed like that for a long time, saying nothing. Words weren't always necessary. Not when the magic between them had already begun to sing. The water lapped gently at the shore, soft as a sigh, and the first pale streaks of dawn bled across the sky, painting the clouds in hues of shell pink and muted gold. The Black Lake was still now, its surface like dark glass, reflecting the waking world above as if it had never stirred. Luna's fingers curled warmly around Draco's, their hands clasped not from necessity, but from something quieter, something neither had named yet. The cold dampness of the lake water still clung to their robes, heavy and clinging, but neither let go. Behind them the ruins, ancient moss-covered spires and crumbling arches sank slowly back beneath the surface, sealed once more by the magic they had helped awaken, and then calm. The song was gone, not lost, not forgotten, but resting. Like a lullaby hung to a child, it had faded into silence, not with a cry, but with a breath. Draco looked down at their joined hands, then at Luna's profile. Her pale hair streaked with lake water, her eyes closed as though listening to something only she could hear. He wanted to ask what she was hearing, but he didn't. Some things were better left untouched, like dew on a spiderweb, or the last note of a forgotten melody. "It's not gone," she said softly, without opening her eyes. "Just sleeping. They're waiting." "Waiting for what?" His voice was low, rough from disuse, and the chill in the air. She opened her eyes then, turning to face him. For when the world remembers how to listen, he almost smiled, almost. But something in her gaze held him still, something clear and unguarded, like sunlight through water. He had spent years building walls, of pride, of bloodline, of carefully rehearsed disdain. But here, now, standing on the silent shore with a girl who spoke to nargles and believed in sunken cities, those walls felt hollow, pointless.
"I thought it would destroy us," he admitted. "Back there, in the chamber, when the glyphs lit up, I thought it was going to pull the castle apart." Luna tilted her head, studying him. "You stayed anyway." "I had to, because of Scorpius." "No." He looked away toward the distant silhouette of Hogwarts. Its towers stood sentinel in the morning light, unarmed, unaware. "Because of you." She didn't answer right away. The wind stirred the reeds along the shore, and a lone water strider skated across the surface of the lake, leaving tiny ripples in its wake. Then she squeezed his hand. "You believe in it now, don't you?" she asked. "Atlantis, the song, the prophecy." He exhaled slowly. "I believe in what we saw. I believe in what I felt down there. Like something old was waking up, and it remembered my name." He paused. "And I believe you weren't mad." Luna smiled then, small and private, like a secret shared between stars. "You never thought I was mad?" "Not really. I thought you were different." "And now?" He turned to face her fully, lifting their joined hands slightly, as if offering proof of something. "Now I think different might be the only thing that saves us." The sun rose higher, spilling light across the water, and for the first time in years, Draco felt unafraid. Not because the danger was past, there would always be danger, always be shadows, but because he wasn't standing in them alone. Luna rested her head against his shoulder, silent. He didn't pull away. He let her stay, breathing in time with the lake, with the dawn, with the fragile unfolding truth between them. The future was uncertain. The prophecy remained, half remembered, half fulfilled. But here, on the quiet shore, with her hand in his, and the world just beginning to wake, it felt like enough.